She didn't know the tea would kill him. That's what Celine Carter told herself as armed men surrounded her in the marble dining hall, their weapons trained on her chest while the most powerful man in New York convulsed on the floor. Blood trickled from his nose. His fingers clawed at the white tablecloth, pulling plates and crystal crashing down. And Julian, her boyfriend, her supposed love, stood back with tears in his eyes and a gun pointed at her head, his voice breaking with perfect rehearsed devastation. "How could you do this?" But it was the other brother who made her heart stop. Kyle Choi. Silent, calculating. The man who'd warned her 3 weeks ago that she was sleeping with the wrong brother. He stood in the doorway now, blood dripping from his palm onto the white marble, watching her with eyes that held neither judgment nor mercy, only recognition. Because he knew, he'd always known, this was never about love. It was about survival. And in the Choi family, survival meant knowing exactly when to pull the trigger. If you want to see how a Bronx etiquette teacher survives a world built on blood and power, stay until the end. Like this video and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The dress was wrong. Celine knew it the moment she stepped out of Julian's black Mercedes and felt the weight of eyes on her skin. Blood red, silk, cut low enough to make a statement but high enough to avoid scandal, or so the boutique owner had promised. But standing in front of the Choi family estate, a fortress of white stone and iron gates that stretched 3 stories into the October sky, she understood the miscalculation. This wasn't a dress for a casual family dinner. This was armor for a war she didn't know she'd been drafted into. "You look incredible." Julian's hand found the small of her back, warm through the thin fabric. His smile was easy, practiced. The same smile that had won her over 6 months ago when he'd walked into her etiquette studio in the Bronx asking if she could teach his nephew table manners. "My family's going to love you." Celine doubted that. She'd grown up teaching corporate executives how to hold a fork and address a board of directors. But this was different. The Choi family didn't just have money. They had the kind of wealth that rewrote laws and buried mistakes deep enough that nobody asked questions. "You didn't mention it was a mansion," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Estate, technically." Julian squeezed her waist. But who's counting? Someone was. She could feel it in the way the security guard at the gate had scanned her face a second too long before waving them through. In the way the gravel crunched under her heels like breaking bones. In the way the front door opened before Julian could knock, revealing a woman in a black uniform whose expression gave away nothing. "Mr. Choi, Miss Carter." The woman stepped aside. "They're waiting in the dining hall." Julian's hand tightened on Celine's back. Just a fraction, but enough that she felt it. Enough that a small voice in her head whispered, "Run." She ignored it. She'd spent 28 years building a life from nothing, building credibility, building a name in a world that dismissed girls from the projects who dared to teach manners to millionaires. She wasn't going to crumble because of a fancy house and a bad dress. The foyer swallowed them whole. White marble stretched in every direction, polished so perfectly Celine could see her reflection staring back, a woman who didn't belong, pretending she did. Twin staircases curved upward like ribs. A chandelier the size of her studio apartment hung overhead, dripping crystal and cold light. "This way." The woman in black led them down a hallway lined with portraits, dead men in expensive suits, dead women in pearls, all of them watching. Celine's heels clicked against the marble. Each step echoed too loud, too sharp. Julian walked beside her, his hand still possessive on her waist, his expression unreadable now. The easy charm had shifted into something else, something focused. "Relax," he murmured. "You're meeting my family, not the firing squad." But when the double doors opened to the dining hall, Celine wasn't so sure. The room was a cathedral of wealth, vaulted ceilings, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking gardens that probably cost more to maintain than her annual salary. A table long enough to seat 20, set with china so delicate it looked like it would shatter if you breathed wrong. And at the head of that table sat a man who didn't need to introduce himself, Jin-Soo Choi. Patriarch. Legend. The man who'd built an empire from shipping routes and real estate and things Celine suspected never made it into Forbes articles. He was smaller than she'd imagined, compact, elegant. His silver hair swept back from a face that betrayed nothing, but his eyes were sharp enough to cut. "Father?" Julian's voice shifted registers, becoming something softer, younger. "This is Celine Carter." Jinsu's gaze swept over her. Clinical, assessing, pricing her like a piece of furniture. "Miss Carter." His accent was faint but precise. "Julian speaks highly of you." "Thank you, Mr. Choi." Celine extended her hand, remembering every rule she'd ever taught. Firm grip, eye contact, confidence without arrogance. "It's an honor to sit." He didn't take her hand, just gestured to a chair halfway down the table, not beside Julian, not near the patriarch, somewhere in the middle distance where she could be observed but not heard. Julian's jaw tightened, but he smiled. Of course. They sat. The woman in black poured wine without being asked, a red so dark it looked like blood in the crystal. Celine didn't drink. She watched. Because in the silence that followed, she realized three things very quickly. 1. Julian was nervous. His leg bounced under the table, a tell she'd never seen before. 2. Jinsu wasn't evaluating her as a potential daughter-in-law. He was evaluating her as a threat. 3. They weren't alone. A door opened at the far end of the room. Footsteps, measured and deliberate. And then a man walked in who made every instinct in Celine's body go quiet and still. Kael Choi. She'd seen his photo once, in a business magazine Julian left on her coffee table, but photographs were lies. They didn't capture the way he moved, like violence wrapped in expensive tailoring. They didn't capture the scar that cut through his left eyebrow. They didn't capture the absolute absence of warmth in his eyes. He wore black. Everything black. Suit, shirt, tie. Like he was attending a funeral. Maybe his own. "You're late." Jinsu's voice carried no inflection. "Traffic." Kael didn't apologize, didn't sit. He stood behind the chair opposite Celine, his hands resting on the back of it, his gaze fixed on her with the kind of intensity that made her skin prickle. "This is Celine," Julian offered, his voice too bright. "Celine Carter, my girlfriend." Kael said it like he was testing the word for structural integrity and finding it lacking. "The etiquette teacher. Tutor," Celine corrected before she could stop herself. "I specialize in executive coaching." Something flickered across Kael's face. Not amusement. Not quite. "Executive coaching. In the Bronx." It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. "People need manners everywhere, Mr. Choi." Celine met his gaze and didn't blink. "Even in places that don't have marble floors." Silence dropped like a hammer. Julian laughed. High. Nervous. "Celine's got a sharp tongue. I told you she was special." Kael's eyes didn't leave hers. "Special. Yes. That's one word for it." Jinsu raised a hand. "Enough. We eat." Dinner was a performance. Course after course appeared like clockwork. Food Celine couldn't identify, plated so artfully it felt criminal to disturb. She ate sparingly, aware of every movement, every swallow. The conversation flowed around her in fragments. Business deals, property acquisitions, names she didn't recognize attached to sums that made her chest tight. Julian participated when spoken to, but his usual confidence was muted here. Neutered. He was a child at this table, no matter how expensive his suit. Kael said nothing. He ate methodically, precisely. His attention split between his father and Celine in a way that made her feel like she was being catalogued, dissected. "Miss Carter?" Jinsu's voice cut through the ambient noise. "Julian tells me you grew up in public housing." The table went silent. "Yes, sir." Celine set down her fork carefully. "The Patterson houses. I lived there until I was 23. And now you teach wealthy men how to use a salad fork." It wasn't quite mockery. It was worse. It was dismissal. "I teach people how to navigate spaces they weren't born into," Celine said evenly. "How to earn respect in rooms that don't want to give it." Jinsu's expression didn't change. "Admirable. And profitable?" "Enough." "Enough for what?" The question hung in the air like a blade. "Enough to build a life," Celine said. "Enough to choose who I let into it." Kael's fork paused midway to his mouth. For the first time all evening, something almost resembling interest crossed his face. Choice. Jinsu leaned back in his chair. An illusion we sell to people who want to believe they control their own destiny. Some of us earn it, Celine said, and some of us inherit it. Jinsu smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Which would you prefer, Miss Carter? It was a test. She could feel Julian's tension radiating from across the table, could see the warning in his eyes. Don't engage, don't challenge. But Celine had spent her whole life being underestimated. Neither, she said. I prefer to build something that can't be taken away by men who think power is a birthright. The silence that followed was absolute. Then Jinsu laughed, a sound like gravel shifting. Julian, you brought a fighter. He stood, and everyone stood with him. I approve. Dinner is finished. He left without another word. The woman in black appeared to clear plates, moving like a ghost through the wreckage. Julian grabbed Celine's arm the moment they were alone. What the hell was that? What? You don't talk to my father like what? Like someone who has a spine? Celine pulled her arm free. You told me this was a casual dinner. It was supposed to be. Julian ran a hand through his hair. You were supposed to smile and nod and let me handle it. Handle what, exactly? He didn't answer. He was staring at something over her shoulder, and when Celine turned, she understood why. Kael stood in the doorway, watching them. Julian. His voice was flat. Father wants to see you, alone. Julian's face went pale. Now? Now. He hesitated, looking between Celine and his brother like a man trying to choose which fire to walk through. I'll be right back. He squeezed Celine's hand. Wait here. Then he was gone, following Kael out of the room like a dog called to heel. Celine stood alone in the dining hall, surrounded by the ghosts of wealthy men and the echo of her own heartbeat. She counted to 60, then to 100. Outside, the gardens had gone dark, and the windows reflected her own image back, a woman in a red dress standing in a room too big for her, too cold. She was about to leave when she heard it. Footsteps, not Julian's. These were heavier, deliberate. Kael appeared in the doorway, alone this time, his hands in his pockets. He'll be a while, he said. Celine straightened. I can wait. Can you? Excuse me? Kael moved into the room, each step measured. He stopped 3 feet away, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, could smell expensive cologne and something underneath it. Copper. Blood. You're smart, he said. Smarter than you're pretending to be. I'm not pretending anything. You stood up to my father. Most people don't do that, not on their first visit. He tilted his head. Which means either you're reckless or you're playing a deeper game than my brother realizes. Celine's pulse kicked up, but she kept her voice level. I'm not playing anything. I'm here because Julian invited me. Julian? Kael smiled, and it was the most dangerous expression Celine had ever seen. My brother invites a lot of people into his life. Most of them regret it. Is that a threat? It's a fact. He reached out, and before Celine could step back, his fingers brushed the diamond pendant at her throat, the one Julian had given her last month. He likes to collect beautiful things, likes to show them off, but he's careless with what he owns. Celine's hand snapped up, catching his wrist. I'm not property. No, Kael's gaze locked onto hers. You're not, which is why you should leave. Why would I do that? His fingers closed around the pendant, not pulling, just holding. Because you're with the wrong brother. The words were a knife between her ribs. Celine released his wrist and stepped back, her heart hammering against her sternum. You don't know me. I know enough. Kael straightened his cuff, his expression returning to neutrality. I know Julian brought you here for a reason that has nothing to do with love. I know you're smart enough to sense that, and I know that if you stay, you'll regret it. Why are you telling me this? Professional courtesy. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. Or maybe I just prefer honest enemies to dishonest allies. He was gone before Celine could respond. She stood there shaking, not with fear, but with something worse. Recognition. Because underneath the warning, underneath the threat, she'd heard something else. Truth. Julian found her 10 minutes later, his smile back in place but his eyes carrying a shadow they hadn't before. Sorry about that. Father wanted to discuss some business. He took her hand. Ready to go? What kind of business? Boring stuff, contracts? You'd hate it. He kissed her knuckles. Let's get out of here. They drove back to the city in silence. Julian's hand rested on her thigh, possessive and warm. But Celine couldn't stop thinking about the other hand, Cale's fingers on her pendant, his voice in her ear. You're with the wrong brother. When Julian pulled up outside her apartment, she didn't invite him up. She kissed him quickly, told him she was tired, and escaped into her building before he could protest. Her studio was exactly as she'd left it, small, orderly, safe. The opposite of everything she'd just experienced. She peeled off the red dress and stood in her bathroom, staring at her reflection. The diamond pendant caught the light. She should take it off. Should put distance between herself and whatever game the Choi family was playing. But she didn't. Because buried under the fear and the warning and the danger was something else. Something she hadn't felt in years. Curiosity. Her phone buzzed. A text from Julian. You were amazing tonight. Father loved you. See you tomorrow? She didn't respond. Instead, she opened her laptop and typed 4 words into the search bar. Kyle Choi criminal charges. The results loaded slowly, fragments of articles and sealed court documents and speculation. Nothing concrete. Nothing she could hold on to. Just smoke and shadows and the sense that she was standing at the edge of something vast and dark. Her phone buzzed again. Not Julian this time. Unknown number. You're looking in the wrong places. Celine's blood went cold. She typed back, Who is this? The response came immediately. Someone who wants you to survive. Stop digging or dig deeper. Your choice. Then nothing. Celine sat in the dark of her apartment, her phone glowing in her hand, her heart beating too fast. She thought about Jinsu's eyes, calculating her worth. She thought about Julian's nervous energy, the way he'd become someone smaller in his father's house. She thought about Kale's warning, delivered with the precision of a man who knew exactly where to cut. You're with the wrong brother. Outside, the city hummed with its usual chaos, sirens and car horns and the sound of people living lives that didn't include blood-red dresses and men who looked at you like you were a problem to be solved. Celine made a decision. She opened a new text to Julian. Tomorrow works, but I want to meet Eli, the nephew you mentioned. His response was almost immediate. Really? That's amazing. He's going to love you. I'll set it up. She set down her phone and stared at the ceiling. If she was going to be trapped in this family's orbit, she needed to understand it, needed to find the cracks in the foundation before someone pushed her through them. And something told her that a withdrawn 8-year-old boy who needed etiquette lessons wasn't the real reason Julian had walked into her studio 6 months ago. The truth was buried somewhere in that marble fortress, and Celine Carter had spent her entire life teaching people how to navigate spaces they weren't born into. It was time to teach herself. The Choi estate looked different in daylight. Celine arrived at 10 in the morning, dressed in navy slacks and a cream blouse, professional, unremarkable. The gates opened before she could announce herself, and the same woman in black led her through the house without a word. But this time, they didn't go to the dining hall. They went up. 2nd floor, 3rd floor. Higher than Celine had realized the house reached. The hallways narrowed, the marble giving way to hardwood, the art becoming more personal. Family photos in expensive frames, a child's drawing, a trophy from some long-ago competition. The woman stopped at a door painted white. He's inside, she said, then left. Celine knocked. Silence. She knocked again. Eli, my name is Celine. Your Uncle Julian asked me to visit. More silence. Then, quietly, the door's open. Celine stepped inside. The room was massive, bigger than her entire apartment, but it felt empty. A bed that could fit 3 people, a desk covered in books, windows overlooking the grounds, and in the corner, sitting cross-legged on the floor with a chess set spread in front of him, was a boy who looked nothing like a Choi. He was small, too thin, dark hair falling into eyes that were too old for his face. Hi. Celine closed the door gently. I know who you are. Eli moved a black knight. Uncle Julian's girlfriend, the one who teaches manners. That's right. I don't need manners. He moved a white pawn. I need people to leave me alone. Celine crossed the room and sat down across from him, careful not to disturb the board. I can do that, if you want. Eli looked up, suspicious. You'd just leave? If that's what you need. He studied her face like he was checking for lies. Then he moved another piece. You can stay, but don't try to teach me anything. Deal. They sat in silence. Eli played chess against himself, moving pieces with the focused intensity of someone trying to solve a problem with no solution. Celine watched, noting the way his hand shook slightly when he reached for the king, the way he chewed his bottom lip, the way he kept glancing at the door like he expected someone to burst through it. Who taught you chess? She asked finally. My mom. He didn't look up. Before she left. Where did she go? Away. That's what they tell me. Away. He knocked over the white king. Black wins. Black always wins. Something cold settled in Celine's chest. Eli, do you know what my uncle does? The boy's voice was flat, clinical. For work? He's in the family business, real estate, shipping. No. Eli looked at her then, and his eyes were hollow. That's what they tell people, but that's not what he does. Celine's pulse quickened. What does he do? Eli reset the board. You should ask him. Or Uncle Kyle. Uncle Kyle doesn't lie. Does Julian lie? Everyone lies. Eli moved a pawn. But Uncle Julian is better at it. The door opened. Celine turned, expecting the woman in black, expecting Julian, but it was Kyle who filled the doorway, his expression unreadable. Eli. His voice was gentle in a way Celine hadn't heard before. Time for your lesson. I don't want... Not negotiable. Kyle's gaze shifted to Celine. Miss Carter, a word. It wasn't a request. Celine stood, smoothing her blouse. Eli didn't look at her as she left, already resetting his pieces for another game he'd play alone. Kyle led her down the hall in silence. They stopped at a window overlooking the gardens, acres of perfect hedges and stone paths and fountains that probably cost more than most people's houses. He likes you, Kyle said. He didn't say 10 words. Exactly. Kyle turned to face her. Eli doesn't talk to strangers, doesn't trust easily. The fact that he let you stay means something. What does it mean? It means you're either very good at what you do or you're exactly what I suspected. Celine crossed her arms. Which is? Someone Julian is using. The words hit harder than they should have. Using for what? Kale was quiet for a long moment, his eyes searching her face. Then he pulled something from his jacket, a manila folder, thin and worn. Open it, he said. Celine hesitated, then took the folder. Inside were photographs, documents, photocopies of financial records with names redacted. And at the center of it all, a woman's face. Beautiful. Terrified. Standing next to Julian at what looked like a charity gala. Who is she? Celine whispered. Her name was Michelle Park. Kale's voice was completely flat. Julian's last girlfriend. She disappeared 8 months ago. The world tilted. Celine flipped through the documents. Bank statements showing large transfers. Emails with subjects like verify shipment and container clearance. And at the bottom, a police report. Filed, investigated, closed due to lack of evidence. Michelle worked for the family, Kale continued. Administrative assistant, smart, ambitious. Julian pursued her the same way he pursued you. Charm, gifts, promises of a future. Celine's hands were shaking. What happened to her? Officially, she left the city, moved to California, started a new life. Unofficially, Kale took the folder back. No one moves to California without taking their passport, without closing their bank account, without saying goodbye to their mother. He held her gaze. Michelle is gone, Miss Carter, and Julian is the reason. Celine's legs felt weak. She leaned against the window frame, her mind racing through every conversation, every gift, every promise Julian had made. Why are you telling me this? She managed. Because you remind me of her. Kale's jaw tightened. Smart, independent, someone who thinks they can handle this world because they've handled everything else. He stepped closer, his voice dropping. But you can't handle Julian. Nobody can, because he doesn't see you as a person. He sees you as a tool, a means to an end. What end? Power. Cale's expression was granite. My father is dying. Cancer. He has maybe 6 months. Julian is positioning himself to take over the family business, but he needs legitimacy, needs someone on his arm who looks clean, who can smile at investors and make them believe he's reformed. Someone like you. The pieces clicked together with horrifying clarity. The etiquette studio, the casual meeting, the 6 months of courtship that felt too easy, too perfect. I'm not... Celine's voice broke. I'm not part of this. You are, now. Cale's hand moved, fast enough that Celine flinched, but he only reached past her to close the curtain, blocking their view from the gardens below. The moment you walked into that dining hall wearing his gift around your neck, you became part of this. And Julian doesn't let his tools walk away. Selena's hand flew to the diamond pendant. She wanted to rip it off, wanted to run. But Kyle caught her wrist. Don't, he said quietly. Not yet. If you run now, he'll know I warned you, and that puts both of us at risk. Both of us? I'm trying to protect what's left of this family. Cale released her wrist. My father built an empire. Julian wants to burn it down and rebuild it in his image. I won't let that happen. So what do I do? Cale was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that changed everything. You stay close to him. You smile. You play the role he cast you in. His eyes were black ice. And you tell me everything he says, everything he does, every move he makes. Celine stared at him. You want me to spy on your brother. I want you to survive. Cale's voice was sharp. And the only way you do that is by becoming more valuable to me than you are to him. Why would I trust you? You shouldn't. Cale stepped back. But you don't have another choice. Because right now, you're standing in the middle of a war you don't understand, holding weapons you don't know how to use. And Julian is counting on that. Footsteps echoed in the hall. Cale's expression shifted instantly, became neutral, professional. Think about it. You have 48 hours before Julian makes his next move. What move? But Cale was already walking away, passing Julian in the hallway with a nod that betrayed nothing. Julian's smile was bright as he approached. There you are. How was Eli? Celine forced her face into something resembling calm. Quiet. We played chess. Good. That's good. Julian kissed her forehead. I was thinking, dinner tonight? Just us. No family drama. Sure, Selena heard herself say. That sounds nice. But nothing was nice anymore. Nothing was safe. Because as Julian led her back down the stairs, his hand warm on hers, his voice full of affection and plans for their future, Celine understood the truth that Kyle had been trying to tell her. She wasn't Julian's girlfriend. She was his next Michelle, and the clock had already started counting down. Celine didn't sleep that night. She sat at her kitchen table until 3 a.m, the manila folder spread in front of her like autopsy photos. Michelle Park's face stared up from a charity gala picture, beautiful, smiling, her arm looped through Julian's with the easy confidence of someone who thought she was safe. The police report was dated March 16th, 8 months ago, the day after Michelle's mother filed a missing persons claim, the day Julian had told investigators that Michelle had been stressed and talking about leaving the city for a while, the day he'd provided text messages showing her discussing California, job opportunities, a fresh start. Except Michelle's phone record showed those texts were sent from her apartment, after her credit card stopped working, after her landlord reported she'd abandoned her lease without notice, after she'd already disappeared. Celine's hands shook as she closed the folder. She should take it to the police, should walk into a precinct and hand over everything Kyle had given her and let them handle it. But the report was already closed, case resolved. Michelle Park had left New York of her own free will, chasing dreams in California, and the detective who'd signed off on it. His name was buried in the acknowledgments of Jin-Soo Choi's biography, a man who'd received a generous donation to his department's youth outreach program. Everyone had a price. Everyone could be bought. Celine's phone buzzed. Julian. Can't stop thinking about you. Breakfast tomorrow? She stared at the message until her vision blurred. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. She could end this right now. could tell him she was done, that she'd met someone else, that she needed space. But Kael's warning echoed in her skull. Julian doesn't let his tools walk away. And underneath that, quieter but sharper. You have 48 hours before Julian makes his next move. Celine typed back, breakfast sounds perfect. Your place or mine? The response came immediately. Mine. I'll send a car at 8. She set down the phone and pressed her palms against her eyes until she saw stars. She'd built her entire life on reading people, on understanding the small signals that separated genuine respect from performance, on knowing when someone was lying. How had she missed this? 6 months. 6 months of dinners and late-night conversations and stolen weekends. 6 months of Julian asking about her childhood, her dreams, her fears. Not because he cared, because he was cataloging her weaknesses, finding the pressure points. Her phone buzzed again. Different number. Unknown. You're making the right choice. Stay close. Document everything. Kael. Celine wanted to throw the phone across the room, wanted to scream that she hadn't made any choice, that she'd been maneuvered into a corner by men who thought she was weak enough to control. Instead, she opened her laptop and started typing. By dawn, she had 17 pages of notes. Every conversation with Julian, every gift, every introduction to his world, dates, times, names, a timeline that showed exactly how deliberate his courtship had been, how calculated. She saved the document to 3 different cloud services under passwords Julian would never guess. Then she took a shower hot enough to burn, dressed in the most professional outfit she owned, and waited for the car. It arrived at 7:55. Black Mercedes, tinted windows. The same driver who'd taken her to the estate. A man who never spoke but whose eyes tracked everything in the rearview mirror. They didn't go to Julian's apartment in Manhattan. They went back to the estate. Celine's stomach dropped as the gates opened. I thought we were having breakfast at Julian's place. The driver said nothing. I need you to turn around, Celine said, her voice sharper. Now. Mr. Choi's orders, ma'am. Which Mr. Choi? But she already knew. The house looked different in morning light. Less like a fortress, more like a mausoleum. The driver opened her door before she could protest further, and the woman in black appeared like smoke, gesturing for Celine to follow. Where's Julian? Celine demanded. Waiting. The woman's expression gave away nothing. This way. They didn't go to the dining hall or Eli's room. They went to the east wing, a part of the house Celine hadn't seen before. The hallway here was narrower, darker. The portraits on the walls were older, faces severe and unforgiving. The woman stopped at a door carved with intricate patterns, knocked twice. Come in. Julian's voice muffled. The woman opened the door and stepped aside. Celine walked into what could only be described as a war room. The space was circular, windowless. Maps covered the walls, shipping routes, property holdings, political districts. A conference table dominated the center, its surface covered in documents and laptops. And seated around that table were 5 men in expensive suits, all of them turning to look at her with expressions ranging from curiosity to contempt. Julian sat at the head of the table. He stood when he saw her, his smile warm but his eyes carrying a warning. Celine, perfect timing. He gestured to an empty chair beside him. I want you to meet some colleagues. Celine didn't move. You said breakfast. This is breakfast. Julian indicated a spread of pastries and coffee on a side table. Business breakfast. I thought it was time you understood what I actually do. I understand you're in real estate. Among other things. Julian's smile didn't waver. Sit. Please. It wasn't a request. Celine sat, her pulse hammering in her throat. She recognized one of the men from news articles, a city councilman who'd been investigated for bribery 2 years ago. Another had the kind of face that didn't photograph well, the kind that belonged to people who did their business in back rooms and offshore accounts. Julian poured her coffee. Gentlemen, this is Celine Carter. She's been helping me refine my public image. I'm an etiquette tutor, Celine said flatly, not a publicist. Same difference. The councilman leaned back in his chair. Julian says you're good at making people believe things. I teach table manners. You teach people how to perform. Julian's hand found her shoulder, squeezed just hard enough to hurt. How to look like they belong in places they don't. Isn't that right? Celine met his eyes, saw something there she'd never seen before. Not affection, not even desire. Ownership. That's one way to describe it, she said carefully. Perfect. Julian released her shoulder and addressed the room. Celine's going to help me with something, a project that requires a very specific kind of performance. What kind of project? Celine's voice was steady, but her hands were clenched under the table. Julian smiled. My father's stepping down. Health issues. The board needs to see a smooth transition, needs to believe I'm ready to lead with integrity and vision. He paused. Needs to see me as a family man. Stable. Committed. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. You want me to, be my fiancé. Julian pulled a box from his jacket. Velvet. Small. The kind that held promises people didn't break. Publicly. For the next 6 months while we navigate the transition. After that, we can quietly separate. You'll be compensated generously. Celine stared at the box. This is insane. This is business. Julian opened the box. Inside was a ring, emerald-cut diamond, at least 3 carats, set in platinum. You'll attend events, smile at investors, play the role of the woman who reformed Julian Choi. In exchange, I'll pay off your student loans, set you up with a studio in a better neighborhood, and ensure you never have to worry about money again. I don't want your money. Everyone wants money, Celine. They just pretend they don't. Julian lifted the ring from its velvet bed. This is a good deal. The best you're going to get from someone like me. Someone like you. A Choi. His smile was sharp. We don't make offers twice. Celine looked around the table. 5 men watching her like sharks circling blood. Julian holding a ring that probably cost more than her car. And somewhere in this house, Kyle's warning, you're with the wrong brother. She thought about Michelle Park, about a woman who'd probably sat in a room just like this, making calculations about survival versus dignity, about a woman who'd made the wrong choice. I need time to think, Celine said. You have until tonight. Julian set the ring on the table in front of her. 8 o'clock. I'm hosting a dinner for the board. You'll be there, wearing this ring, or you'll be explaining to a very interested journalist why you've been accepting gifts from a man you claim to barely know. Celine's blood went cold. That's a threat. That's reality. Julian stood, buttoning his jacket. Welcome to the family business, Celine. It's not as pretty as the brochures suggest. He walked out. The 5 men followed, leaving Celine alone with a coffee she couldn't drink and a ring she couldn't wear and the crushing understanding that she'd been a fool. Julian had never wanted a girlfriend. He'd wanted a prop. And she'd walked onto his stage with her eyes wide open, thinking she was smart enough to see the wires. The door opened. Celine expected the woman in black. But it was Kyle who entered, closing the door behind him with careful precision. You heard, Celine said. Not a question. Every word. Kale crossed to the table, picked up the ring, examined it like he was checking for defects. It belonged to Park Min-seo, head of the Sangsu clan, reported stolen 3 years ago after a territorial dispute. He's giving me stolen jewelry. He's marking you. Kyle set the ring down. Anyone who recognizes this ring will know you're connected to the family. Connected to business, most people don't survive. Celine's hands were shaking. I need to leave. Right now. I'll disappear. Change my name. He'll find you. Kale's voice was flat. Julian doesn't lose things he's claimed, and you, Miss Carter, are claimed. Then what do I do? Kale was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone, typed something, and showed her the screen. It was a bank statement. Michelle Park's account. The last transaction was a wire transfer. $20,000 sent to Julian Choi. The memo line read, for services rendered. Michelle didn't disappear, Kyle said quietly. She tried to blackmail him, threatened to expose his side deals unless he paid her off. So Julian paid. And then he made sure she couldn't ask for more. Celine felt bile rising in her throat. You're saying he killed her? I'm saying she's gone. And the only reason I know about that transfer is because I have access to accounts Julian thinks are hidden. Kale put the phone away. You can run. You can try to disappear, but Julian has resources you can't imagine. And if he thinks you're a threat, if he believes for 1 second that you know too much, you'll end up like Michelle. So I'm trapped. Your leverage. Kale's expression was granite. Julian wants you as his fiancé because it legitimizes him, but I need you where you are because it gives me access to his plans, to his movements, to every mistake he's about to make. I'm not a spy. You're a survivor. Kale stepped closer. And right now, survival means playing the role he's cast you in, wearing that ring, smiling at his investors, and telling me everything he says when he thinks you're asleep. Celine wanted to scream, wanted to tear the room apart, but she'd spent her entire life swallowing rage and performing competence, and the habits ran too deep to break now. What happens in 6 months, she asked, when the engagement ends? If we're lucky, Julian is in prison or dead. Kael's voice carried no emotion. If we're not, you disappear anyway, but at least you'll have a head start. And if I refuse, then you're on your own. Kael moved toward the door. And Julian doesn't leave loose ends untied. He was almost gone when Celine spoke. Why are you doing this? Her voice cracked. Why help me at all? Kael paused, his hand on the doorknob. Because my father built an empire on blood and sacrifice. And Julian wants to turn it into something worse, something that destroys everything it touches. He looked back at her. Michelle Park was a warning I ignored. I won't make that mistake again. Then he was gone. Celine sat alone in the war room, surrounded by maps of territories she didn't understand and documents she couldn't read. The ring sat on the table, catching the overhead light, beautiful and poisonous. She picked it up, felt the weight of it, put it on. The band was too tight. She'd need to have it resized. But that was fine. That was part of the performance, part of playing the role of a woman who'd said yes to a proposal that wasn't really a proposal at all. Her phone buzzed. Julian, car will pick you up at 7, dress shopping at 3. My treat. Celine typed back, see you then. Then she took a photo of the ring on her finger and sent it to the unknown number she knew belonged to Kael. No message, no explanation, just proof that she'd made her choice. The response came 2 minutes later. Good, now the real work begins. Goodbye. The dress shop was in Manhattan. Exclusive. The kind of place that didn't display prices because if you had to ask, you couldn't afford it. Julian met her there at 3 exactly, his smile warm and his hand possessive on her waist, as the staff descended with champagne and measuring tapes. Something elegant, Julian told the stylist. Not too flashy. She needs to look like old money, not new. Celine stood on a platform while 3 women circled her, pulling fabric samples and discussing cuts like she wasn't there. Julian watched from a leather chair, his expression satisfied. You're going to be perfect, he said. The board is going to love you. What if I don't love them? Julian's smile tightened. Then you'll perform anyway. That's what you do, isn't it? Perform. The stylist brought out a gown, midnight blue, simple cut, elegant without being ostentatious. Exactly the kind of thing someone trying to look like they belonged in old money would wear. Celine tried it on, looked at herself in the mirror, saw a stranger staring back. Beautiful. Julian appeared behind her, his hands on her shoulders. You could pass for one of us. I'm not one of you. Not yet. His fingers tightened. But you will be. They bought 3 dresses. Evening wear for the board dinner, something casual for a charity brunch, and a cocktail dress for what Julian called informal networking. Each one cost more than Celine's monthly rent. Consider it an investment, Julian said as they left. In our future. We don't have a future. We have a contract. Same thing. He opened the car door for her. In my world, everything is a contract. Love, loyalty, family, it's all negotiable. Celine slid into the car. What's not negotiable? Julian's expression went cold. Betrayal. That's the one thing we don't forgive. They drove back to her apartment in silence. When they arrived, Julian walked her to her door, something he'd never done before. His hand lingered on her wrist. Tonight's important, he said quietly. The board needs to see us as a united front, needs to believe you're choosing this. Choosing me. I'm choosing this. Are you? His grip tightened. Because if I find out you're having second thoughts, if I discover you've been talking to anyone about our arrangement, the deal is off, and you'll find out exactly what happens to people who waste my time. Celine met his eyes. Is that what happened to Michelle? The silence that followed was absolute. Julian's face went blank. Not angry, not defensive, just empty. Who told you about Michelle? No one. I saw her name in a search. Celine kept her voice steady. When I was researching the Choi family, there were articles about her disappearance. Michelle left. Julian's voice was mechanical. She wanted a different life. I gave her the money to start over. That's generous. I can afford to be generous. He released her wrist. But only when people appreciate what I'm offering. Michelle didn't appreciate it. She wanted more. Always more. His smile was terrible. I hope you're smarter than that. He kissed her forehead, gentle, affectionate, completely wrong, and walked away. Celine waited until his car disappeared around the corner. Then she went inside, locked every lock, and sat on her bathroom floor until her hands stopped shaking. Her phone buzzed. Kael. What did he say? Celine typed with numb fingers. He knows I know about Michelle. Did he threaten you? He didn't have to. A pause. Then, be careful tonight. Stay visible. Stay near witnesses. I'll be there. At the dinner? Watching. Celine set down her phone and stared at herself in the bathroom mirror. Her reflection looked hollow, terrified, like a woman who'd just realized she was standing on ice that was already cracking under her weight. She thought about running, about grabbing her passport and her savings and disappearing into a city Julian's money couldn't reach. But she'd researched the Choi family, had spent hours reading articles about their shipping empire, their real estate holdings, their political connections. There was no city Julian's money couldn't reach, no place she could hide that he wouldn't eventually find. So she did what she'd always done when the world demanded more than she had to give. She performed. The board dinner was held at the estate. Of course it was. Everything in Julian's world led back to that marble fortress, that monument to power built on foundations she was only beginning to understand. Celine arrived at 7:45, wearing the midnight blue gown and the stolen ring and a smile she'd practiced in the mirror for an hour. The same driver, the same tinted windows, the same sense of walking into a trap she'd already sprung. The dining hall had been transformed. The long table was set for 30, candles burning in silver holders, crystal catching light like captured stars. The board members were already arriving, men in tuxedos, women in gowns that cost what Celine used to make in a year, all of them moving through the space like they owned it. Like wealth was oxygen they'd been breathing since birth. Julian found her immediately, tucked her hand into the crook of his elbow, introduced her to a parade of faces and names she'd forget by morning. This is Celine Carter, he said over and over, each repetition making her feel less real. My fiancé. The ring caught everyone's attention. Several women reached for her hand, examining the diamond with expressions that ranged from envy to suspicion. One older woman, Park something, her name lost in the noise, went pale when she saw it. That's a Sangsu piece, the woman whispered. How did you— Family heirloom, Julian said smoothly. My father insisted. The woman's eyes narrowed, but she said nothing else. Jinsu arrived at 8 exactly. He looked smaller than Celine remembered, frailer. The cancer was visible now in the hollows of his cheeks, the careful way he moved, but his eyes were still sharp. Miss Carter. He took her hand. His skin was paper thin. I see my son has made his intentions clear. Yes, sir? And you've accepted. It wasn't a question, but Celine answered anyway. I have. Good. Jinsu studied the ring. Something flickered across his face. Recognition, maybe. Or concern. Julian has always had expensive taste. I hope you're worth the investment. Before Celine could respond, he moved to the head of the table. Everyone quieted. We gather tonight to celebrate a transition, Jinsu said. His voice was weak but carried. I built this family from nothing, from steel and sweat and sacrifices most of you can't imagine. And now it's time to pass that legacy to the next generation. He gestured to Julian. My son will lead us into a new era, an era of legitimacy, of growth, of power that doesn't need to hide in shadows. Applause, polite, calculated. Julian stood, pulling Celine up with him. Thank you, Father. I promise to honor everything you've built, to protect this family's interests, and to ensure that the Choi name remains synonymous with excellence. More applause. Julian's hand was crushing hers. They sat. Dinner began. Course after course, each one more elaborate than the last. Celine ate mechanically, her attention split between the conversations around her and the exits she'd already mapped. Kale wasn't there. She'd searched the room twice, looked for his face in the crowd of servers and security. Nothing. Watching, he'd said. But from where? Halfway through the main course, Julian's phone vibrated. He checked it, his expression shifting. Then he leaned close to Celine. I need to handle something. Stay here. Smile. Don't talk to anyone about anything important. What's happening? Business. He kissed her cheek. I'll be back in 20 minutes. He left. Celine sat alone at the table, surrounded by strangers in expensive clothes who looked at her like she was a curiosity, an outsider wearing the right costume, but still obviously wrong. You're very brave. The voice came from her left. A woman in emerald green, older, elegant. Taking on Julian Choi. I'm not taking him on. I'm marrying him. Same thing. The woman sipped her wine. He's not an easy man. His mother found that out the hard way. Celine's pulse quickened. His mother? Died when Julian was 12. Car accident. Very tragic. The woman's expression was carefully neutral. Though some of us wondered about the timing, she just filed for divorce, was planning to take the boys and leave the country. I didn't know that. Jinsu doesn't advertise his failures. And a wife who wanted to leave? That's definitely a failure. The woman set down her glass. I'm Margaret Chen. I knew Julian's mother. We were friends. Were? It's hard to stay friends with dead women. Margaret's smile was sad. But I remember what she told me. Right before the accident, she said Julian was becoming just like his father, cold, calculated, willing to sacrifice anything for power. Why are you telling me this? Because you're wearing a ring that belonged to a man my husband helped put in prison. And Julian Choi doesn't give family heirlooms to women he loves. He gives them to women he wants to own. Margaret stood. Be careful, Miss Carter. The Choi men collect beautiful things, but they don't know how to keep them alive. She walked away, leaving Celine alone with a truth she couldn't unsee. Julian's mother had tried to leave, and died in a convenient accident. Michelle had tried to blackmail him, and disappeared. Celine was trying to survive, and wearing a stolen ring that marked her as property. She stood abruptly, her chair scraping against marble. Several heads turned. She forced a smile. Restroom, excuse me. She walked out of the dining hall on legs that barely held her weight, found a bathroom, locked herself inside. Her phone buzzed. KL, East Wing, third door on the left. Now. Celine stared at the message. Every instinct screamed at her to go back to the dinner, to stay visible, to follow the plan. But Kael's urgency cut through the noise. She left the bathroom and moved through the house like a ghost. East Wing, the portraits watching, the hallway narrowing, third door on the left. It was unlocked. Inside was an office, dark wood, leather chairs, a desk covered in documents. And standing at the window, his silhouette sharp against the night sky, was Kael. What's wrong? Celine closed the door behind her. Kael turned. His face was carved from stone. Julian's making his move, tonight. What move? He's transferring assets, using your name, your social security number, your bank account. Kael pulled up something on a laptop. He's been building a financial trail for 3 weeks. Made it look like you've been stealing from the family, embezzling, laundering money through your business. Celine's legs gave out. She caught herself on the desk. That's insane. It doesn't matter. Kael's voice was hard. By tomorrow morning, there will be enough evidence to have you arrested. And when the police dig deeper, they'll find connections to Michelle Park, to her disappearance. Julian's been planting breadcrumbs that lead straight to you. Why would he do this? He needs me. For the board. He needed you to get through tonight. Kael's jaw tightened. To show the board he's stable, committed. But once they approve his ascension tomorrow, you're a liability, and Julian doesn't keep liabilities. The room spun. Celine gripped the desk hard enough to hurt. So what do I do? You run. Right now. I have a car waiting, cash, new identity. You disappear before he can spring the trap. He'll find me. Maybe, but at least you'll have a chance. Celine looked at Kael, really looked, saw the exhaustion in his eyes. the weight of carrying secrets too heavy for one person. "Why are you helping me?" she whispered. "Really?" Kyle was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Because you remind me of someone I couldn't save, and I'm tired of watching Julian destroy everything he touches." Before Celine could respond, the door opened. Julian stood in the doorway, his expression pleasant, curious. "There you are," he said. "I was looking for you." His gaze shifted to Kyle, to the laptop, to the space between them, and his smile sharpened into something terrible. "Brother," he said softly, "I see you've been busy." Kyle's hand moved to his jacket. Celine saw the outline of a gun. "Don't," Julian said. His voice was calm, reasonable. "We're family. We don't draw on family." "You stopped being family when you killed Mother." Kyle's words dropped like stones. Silence crashed down. Julian's expression didn't change. "That's a very serious accusation. Do you have proof?" "I have enough." "Do you?" Julian stepped into the room, closed the door behind him. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're the one plotting, helping my fiancée steal from the family, building a case against me. That's what the evidence will show. That's what Father will believe when I present it tomorrow." Celine's heart hammered against her ribs. She was trapped between them, between the man who'd claimed her and the man who'd tried to save her. "This ends now," Kyle said. "You confess to Father, to the board, or I release everything I have." "Everything you have is circumstantial. Theories, no bodies, no proof." Julian's smile was grotesque. "But what I have, financial records, video footage of Celine accessing restricted files, testimony from witnesses who saw her with Michelle Park weeks before Michelle disappeared." "That's impossible," Celine breathed. "I never met Michelle." "But you did. You just don't remember it." Julian pulled out his phone, showed her a photo. Celine standing outside a coffee shop, Michelle Park beside her, both of them caught mid-conversation. "Photoshop is amazing these days. You'd be surprised what you can make people believe." Cale moved fast, gun out, trained on his brother. Julian didn't flinch. "You won't shoot me. Because the moment you do, the files I've prepared auto-send to every law enforcement agency in the state. And Celine? She'll spend the rest of her life in prison for crimes she didn't commit." "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Julian's eyes were black, empty. "Test me, brother. Pull that trigger. See what happens." Celine couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The walls were closing in, and she was drowning in the certainty that no matter what happened next, she'd already lost. "Put the gun down," she heard herself say. "Kyle, please." Kyle didn't move. "Celine, put it down." Her voice broke. "He wins. Don't you see? He's always been 10 steps ahead." Slowly, Kyle lowered the weapon. Julian's smile widened. "Smart girl." He crossed to Celine, took her hand. The stolen ring caught the light. "Now, we're going back to dinner. We're going to finish this evening like nothing happened. And tomorrow, when the board approves my ascension, you're going to stand beside me and smile like you're the happiest woman alive." "And after?" "After?" Julian's grip tightened until her bones ground together. "After, you're going to do exactly what I tell you, when I tell you, for as long as I need you. Because if you don't, if you so much as think about running or talking or breathing wrong, I'll destroy you. I'll destroy everyone you've ever cared about, and I'll make sure you watch." He released her hand, adjusted his cuffs. "Are we clear?" Celine looked at Kyle, saw the defeat in his eyes, the understanding that they'd both been outmaneuvered. "We're clear," she whispered. "Excellent." Julian opened the door. "After you." Celine walked into the hallway on legs that didn't feel like hers. Julian's hand found her waist, possessive and warm. Behind them, Kyle followed in silence. They returned to the dinner. Everyone looked up, smiled, raised glasses in toast. Jinsu watched from the head of the table, his expression unreadable. And Celine understood with crystalline clarity that she'd just crossed a line she could never uncross. She was trapped, owned, a pawn in a game played by men who collected beautiful things and broke them for sport. Julian's whisper was hot against her ear. "Welcome to the family, darling. I promise you'll learn to love it." But all Celine could think about was Michelle Park's face in those photographs. the terror in her eyes, the understanding that she'd walked into a trap with no exit, and the ring on Celine's finger, heavy, beautiful, stolen, felt less like a promise and more like a noose pulling tight. The board dinner ended at midnight. Julian drove her home himself, his hand possessive on her thigh. When they arrived at her apartment, he walked her to the door. "Tomorrow morning," he said. 8 a.m. There's a press conference. You'll be there. We'll announce our engagement officially. Julian, he kissed her, hard, claiming, then pulled back. "Get some sleep. You'll need your strength." He left. Celine locked her door, all 3 locks, then slid down to the floor and pressed her hands against her face until she couldn't tell if she was crying or screaming or both. Her phone buzzed. "Kael, I'm sorry." She didn't respond. What was there to say? The phone buzzed again, different number. One she didn't recognize. The message was simple. "First light, Patterson Memorial Garden. Come alone or don't come at all." Celine stared at the text until her vision blurred. It could be a trap. Could be Julian testing her. Could be someone working for him, trying to see if she'd run. But something in her chest, the part that had spent 28 years teaching herself to survive, told her this was different. This was her last chance. She looked at the clock. 3 a.m. First light would come around 5:30. 2.5 hours to decide if she wanted to live or if she wanted to keep pretending survival was enough. Celine stood, walked to her bedroom, pulled out the manila folder Kael had given her. Michelle Park's face stared up at her, beautiful and doomed. Then she pulled out a second folder, the one she'd compiled herself. 17 pages of notes, dates, times, evidence. She photographed every page, uploaded them to 4 different cloud accounts, encrypted them, created dead man switches that would send the files to journalists if she didn't check in every 12 hours. If Julian wanted to own her, he was going to have to own all of her, including the parts that knew how to burn his empire to the ground. By the time she finished, the sky outside was beginning to shift from black to gray. First light. Celine dressed in running clothes, grabbed her phone, left her apartment keys on the counter. She wasn't sure if she was coming back. Patterson Memorial Garden was in the Bronx, her old neighborhood, the place she'd spent her childhood navigating streets that taught you early, survive or die. There was no middle ground. She took a cab, paid cash, arrived as the sun broke over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of blood and gold. The garden was empty, just stone benches and overgrown paths, and the ghosts of people who'd tried to find peace in a world that didn't offer it. Celine sat on a bench and waited. At exactly 5:45, a woman appeared, older, elegant, carrying a coat over one arm. Margaret Chen, the woman from the dinner. "You came," Margaret said. "I wasn't sure you would." "Who are you?" Celine's voice was hoarse. "Really?" Margaret sat beside her. Someone who loved Julian's mother. Someone who's been watching the Choi family destroy itself for 30 years. And someone who has information that could put Julian in prison for the rest of his life. She pulled a USB drive from her pocket, set it on the bench between them. "Everything's on here. Financial records, witness statements, proof that Julian orchestrated his mother's death, proof of what happened to Michelle Park, proof of every crime he's committed in the last decade." Celine stared at the drive. "Why give this to me?" "Because you're his weak point." Margaret's smile was sad. "He's invested too much in you, built too elaborate a trap, and that means he's exposed. If you're brave enough to use this, if you're willing to risk everything, you can end him. Or he'll end me first." "Probably," Margaret stood, "but at least you'll go down fighting, and sometimes that's all we get." She walked away, leaving the USB drive on the bench. Celine picked it up, felt the weight of it, all the evidence she needed to destroy Julian Choi, all the evidence that would make her a target for the rest of her life. She thought about Michelle Park, about Julian's mother, about every woman who'd tried to escape the Choi family and failed. Then she thought about the girl she'd been, growing up in the Patterson houses, learning that survival meant making impossible choices and living with the consequences. Celine pocketed the drive, pulled out her phone, sent a text to Kael, "I'm in, but we do this my way." The response came immediately. "What's your way?" Celine looked at the rising sun, at the city waking up around her, at the world that had tried to break her 1,000 times and failed. She typed, We make him think he's won. Then we take everything. She stood, started walking. Not back to her apartment, not to Julian, not to safety, forward, into the fire. Because Celine Carter had spent her entire life teaching people how to navigate spaces they weren't born into. And now she was going to teach Julian Choi what happened when you underestimated a woman who'd already survived hell. The war had begun. And this time, she was done playing defense. The press conference was scheduled for 8 a.m. at the Grand Pemberton Hotel. Celine arrived at 7:30, the USB drive burning a hole in her jacket pocket like a live grenade. She'd spent the cab ride memorizing every file Margaret had given her, bank statements tracing money from Jin Su's accounts through shell corporations to a mechanic shop that had serviced Julian's mother's car the day before her brakes failed. Witness testimony from a dock worker who'd seen Julian meeting with known enforcers from the Sang-Soo clan the week Michelle Park disappeared. Phone records, video timestamps, a paper trail so comprehensive it could only mean one thing. Margaret Chen had been building this case for years, and now she'd handed it to Celine like a loaded weapon with the safety off. Julian waited in the hotel's green room, flanked by a team of publicists and lawyers who moved around him like priests attending an altar. He looked perfect, tailored navy suit, hair precisely styled, the kind of smile that made investors write checks and journalists soften their questions. When he saw Celine, his expression shifted into something warmer, practiced. There she is. He crossed the room, took her hands, kissed both cheeks. The publicists cooed. Someone snapped a photo. "You look beautiful." Celine wore the dress he'd chosen. Cream silk, pearls at her throat, hair pulled back to show off the stolen ring that caught every light in the room. "I'm ready," she said. Julian's eyes searched her face, looking for cracks, for signs of the woman who'd stood in his brother's office 12 hours ago, trapped between two men who both wanted to use her. But Celine had spent the night rebuilding herself. Brick by brick, lie by lie. She smiled. Let him see only what he needed to see: compliance, resignation, defeat. Good. Julian squeezed her hands. Remember, we're in love. This is a celebration. The press will ask about the engagement, about our plans. You defer to me for anything substantive. Smile. Look happy. That's all you need to do. What about questions about your mother? About Michelle Park? The room went silent. Every publicist stopped moving. The lawyers exchanged glances. Julian's grip tightened enough to hurt. There won't be questions about that. But if there are, there won't be. His voice dropped to a whisper only she could hear. Because I've made sure the only journalists in that room are ones who know what questions to avoid. And if anyone goes off script, they'll find their careers very suddenly over. He released her hands, straightened his cuffs. Showtime. The press room was packed. Cameras lined the back wall. Reporters filled every seat, notebooks open, recording devices live. Celine recognized faces from major outlets: Times, Journal, local news stations. All of them watching as Julian took the podium with her standing slightly behind him, the perfect picture of supportive fiancé. Good morning. Julian's voice carried easily, confident, commanding. Thank you all for coming. I'm here today to share some personal news that I'm incredibly excited about. He reached back, took Celine's hand, drew her forward. 6 months ago, I met an extraordinary woman, someone who challenged me, who made me want to be better, who showed me that real strength comes from integrity, not just power. His smile was devastating, convincing. Celine Carter has agreed to be my wife, and I've never been happier. Applause, camera flashes. Celine forced herself to smile, to lean into Julian's side like she belonged there. The questions started immediately. Mr. Choi, how did you two meet? Julian launched into the story they'd rehearsed. The etiquette studio, his nephew needing help. Love at first sight disguised as a business arrangement. It was smooth, polished, almost believable. Miss Carter, what attracted you to Julian? Celine opened her mouth. The script was simple: his kindness, his intelligence, the way he makes me laugh. But the USB drive in her pocket felt like it was vibrating, screaming. His honesty, she heard herself say. Julian is the most honest man I've ever met. Something flickered across Julian's face. Too fast for the cameras to catch. A warning. More questions, softball ones about wedding plans and honeymoon destinations. Julian answered them all with practiced ease, his hand never leaving Celine's waist. Then a voice from the back, young, female, unfamiliar. Mr. Choi, there are rumors about your ascension to CEO being connected to your father's declining health. Can you comment on the timing of this engagement? The room went cold. Julian's smile didn't waver. My father's health is a private family matter, but I can tell you that his decision to step down has nothing to do with my personal life. The board has confidence in my leadership. That's all that matters. And what about the allegations of financial irregularities in the transition? Julian's grip on Celine's waist became painful. There are no irregularities. Our accounting is transparent and has been reviewed by independent auditors. Independent auditors who were hired by the Choi family. That's standard practice in any... What about Michelle Park? The name dropped like a bomb. Every camera swung toward the young reporter. A woman in her 20s, standing now, her notebook forgotten. Michelle Park was your girlfriend before Miss Carter. She disappeared 8 months ago under suspicious circumstances. Her mother still doesn't know where she is. Do you have any comment? The publicists moved, fast, trying to end the conference. But Julian raised a hand. Michelle Park chose to leave New York, he said calmly. I helped her start a new life in California. I have the emails to prove it. This has been investigated and resolved. By a detective who received funding from your father's foundation. Julian's mask slipped. Just for a second. Celine saw the rage beneath, the calculation. I think we're done here. His voice was ice. Thank you all for coming. He pulled Celine off the stage before anyone could ask another question. The publicists swarmed, creating a human wall between them and the press. Someone was shouting about lawsuits, about reputation damage, about finding out who let that reporter in. Julian didn't speak until they were in the car, alone. The privacy partition raised. Then he turned to Celine with eyes that held murder. Who was that? I don't know. Don't lie to me. His hand shot out, grabbed her jaw, forced her to look at him. Who was that? I don't know. Celine tried to pull away, but his grip was iron. Maybe someone who actually cares about Michelle. About the truth. The truth, Julian laughed, released her face. The truth is whatever I say it is. That's how power works, Celine. That's what you still don't understand. He pulled out his phone. Made a call. Find her, the reporter. I want her name, her address, every article she's ever written, and I want to know who's feeding her information. He ended the call. Looked at Celine. Did you talk to someone? Did Kael give you... No. Celine's voice was steady despite the fear crawling up her spine. I've been with you. You know that. Every minute since last night. Julian studied her face, looking for tells, for lies. Finally, he relaxed. Marginally. Good. Because if I find out you've been working against me, what I do to you will make Michelle's disappearance look like mercy. The car pulled up to the estate. Jin-Soo was waiting in the foyer, his face carved from granite. My office, he said. Both of you. Now. Julian's confidence evaporated. He became something smaller, younger, a child called to answer for breaking something valuable. They followed Jin-Soo through the house, past the portraits, past the marble and crystal, into a room Celine hadn't seen before, a study lined with books in languages she couldn't read, dominated by a desk that looked older than the building itself. Jin-Soo sat, didn't invite them to do the same. Explain, he said. How a press conference meant to legitimize this family became a public interrogation about missing women and financial fraud. It was sabotage. Julian's voice was tight. Someone planted that reporter, someone who wants to undermine my ascension. And who would want that? Silence. Jin-Soo's gaze shifted to Celine. Miss Carter, do you know anything about this? No, sir. You understand that if you're lying, if you've brought scandal into this family, there will be consequences. Celine met his eyes. I understand. Jin-Soo studied her for a long moment. Then he pulled out a folder, set it on the desk. I had you investigated, he said. Thoroughly. Background check. Financial history. Every relationship you've ever had. Every place you've ever lived. Celine's blood went cold. And do you know what I found? Jin-Soo opened the folder. A woman who grew up in poverty, who built a business from nothing, who has no criminal record, no suspicious associations, no red flags of any kind. He paused. Which makes you either exactly what you appear to be or the best operative I've ever seen. I'm not an operative. I'm an etiquette tutor who made the mistake of falling for the wrong man. Julian flinched. Jinsu smiled. It was the most terrifying expression Celine had ever seen. The wrong man. Interesting choice of words. He stood. Walked to the window. I built this family on blood and sacrifice. I've done things that would turn your stomach. Destroyed people who threatened what I was building, and I've never regretted a single decision. He turned. But I'm dying, and I need to know that what I've built will survive me, that the empire I'm leaving behind won't collapse the moment I'm gone. It won't, Julian said. I'll make sure. You'll make sure of nothing. Jinsu's voice cracked like a whip. You're reckless, arrogant. You think violence and intimidation are substitutes for strategy. You think making people afraid of you is the same as making them loyal. Father, I'm not finished. Jinsu moved back to his desk, pressed a button. A screen descended from the ceiling, already displaying an image. Security footage, time-stamped from last night, showing Kael's office, showing Celine and Kael standing close, the laptop open between them, showing the moment Julian walked in. I see everything that happens in this house, Jinsu said quietly. Every conversation, every meeting, every betrayal. He pressed another button. The footage changed. Showed Celine leaving her apartment building at 5:30 that morning. Showed her getting into a cab. Showed her meeting Margaret Chen in Patterson Memorial Garden. Celine's heart stopped. You've been busy, Miss Carter. Jinsu's eyes were black, empty. Meeting with a woman who's been trying to destroy my family for 3 decades. A woman whose husband I ruined when he tried to steal from me. A woman who has every reason to want revenge. I didn't know who she was, Celine whispered. She approached me, said she had information about my son, about Julian's mother, about things that are none of your business. Jinsu pulled out a gun, set it on the desk between them. So now I need to know. Are you working with Margaret Chen? Are you trying to take down this family from the inside? No. Celine's voice cracked. I'm trying to survive. Survival. Jinsu picked up the gun, checked the chamber. Everyone who walks into this family says they want to survive. Julian's mother said it. Michelle Park said it. And now you. He looked at Julian. How do we know she's not another liability? Julian's face was pale. She won't talk. I'll make sure. You said that about Michelle. Jinsu's finger rested on the trigger. And look how that turned out. Celine's mind was racing. The USB drive was still in her pocket. If they searched her, if they found it, she was dead. Not metaphorically, actually dead. I don't know what Margaret told you, she said carefully, but whatever it was, I didn't take it. I didn't agree to help her. I came back here, to Julian, because I made a choice. What choice? To survive by any means necessary. Celine straightened. Let them see the truth beneath the fear. You're right. I grew up in poverty. I clawed my way out of the projects by learning to read people, to understand what they want and give it to them. That's what I do. That's all I've ever done. She looked at Julian. You wanted someone who could play the perfect fiancé, someone who could smile at investors and make them believe you're legitimate. I can do that better than anyone. And in exchange, Jinsu's voice was flat. In exchange, I get to live. Celine's hands were shaking. She clasped them behind her back. I get security, money, a life that doesn't involve teaching table manners to assholes who think they're better than me because they were born rich. The silence was absolute. Then Jinsu laughed. Set down the gun. Finally, someone honest. He moved to a cabinet, poured 3 glasses of whiskey, handed one to Julian, one to Celine. To survival, he said, and to understanding that in this family, loyalty isn't given, it's bought, and the price is everything you are. They drank. The whiskey burned going down. Jinsu set his glass aside. Miss Carter, you'll continue to play the role Julian has cast you in. You'll smile. You'll attend events. You'll make this family look legitimate. And in exchange, you'll be compensated, generously. And Margaret Chen is being handled as we speak. Jinsu's smile was terrible. You won't see her again. Celine's stomach dropped. What does that mean? It means you should choose your allies more carefully. Jinsu gestured to the door. Now go, both of you. I have work to do. Julian took Celine's arm. Led her out of the study. His grip was bruising. They were halfway down the hall when Celine pulled free. What's he going to do to her? What he does to everyone who threatens this family. Julian's voice was empty. Margaret Chen is a problem. Problems get solved. You mean she gets killed? I mean she gets solved. Julian grabbed her face, forced her to look at him. And if you have any more secret meetings, any more conversations with people who want to hurt us, you'll be solved too. Do you understand? Celine nodded. She had no choice. Julian released her. Good. Now smile. We have a charity brunch in 2 hours. A lot of important people to impress. He walked away. Celine stood alone in the hallway, her reflection staring back from a dozen gilded mirrors. She looked like a ghost, pale, hollow. A woman who'd just watched her last possible ally get erased. Her phone buzzed. She pulled it out with shaking hands. Unknown number. Margaret is safe, but you need to move faster. They're closing the net. Kyle, Celine typed back. How do I know Margaret's safe? Your father just said, he said what you needed to hear, what Julian needed to hear. Trust me. I don't trust anyone. Smart. But you're going to have to make an exception, because what happens next requires both of us. Celine looked around, making sure no cameras could see her screen. What happens next? Family dinner. Tonight. You, me, Julian, Father, and Eli. It's a test. Father wants to see if you break under pressure. What kind of pressure? The response took a minute to come. When it did, Celine's blood turned to ice, the kind that kills people who fail. The family dinner was set for 7 p.m., formal, the kind where every fork had a purpose and every pause in conversation carried weight. Celine spent the afternoon being prepared like a sacrifice. Hair, makeup, a gown in deep burgundy that cost more than her old car. The stylists worked in silence, their hands efficient and impersonal. By the time they finished, she looked like someone else. Someone who belonged in marble halls and crystal dining rooms. Someone who could marry into the Choi family and not shatter under the weight. Julian picked her up at 6:30, drove her to the estate himself. His mood had shifted again. Lighter, almost playful. Like the confrontation in Jinsu's office had never happened. You're going to do great tonight, he said. Father's already impressed with how you handled this morning. The press conference could have been a disaster, but you stayed calm, stayed on script. I didn't have much choice. No, you didn't. Julian's hand found her thigh. But that's the beauty of this arrangement. Neither of us has a choice. We're stuck with each other now. Might as well make the best of it. And after 6 months? After 6 months, we'll see. His smile was sharp. Maybe you'll surprise me. Maybe you'll actually want to stay. Celine said nothing. The USB drive was hidden now, back at her apartment, encrypted and uploaded to cloud servers that would auto-release to journalists if she didn't check in every 12 hours. It was the only insurance she had, the only thing keeping her alive. The estate looked different at dusk. The white stone caught the dying light, turned it golden, beautiful, like a painting of something that had never actually existed. Inside, the dining hall had been set for 5. Intimate. No staff hovering, just family. Jinsu sat at the head, Kyle to his right, Eli to his left, the boy looking smaller than ever in a suit that swallowed him whole. Miss Carter. Jinsu stood when she entered. The gesture was courtly, old-fashioned, completely at odds with the man who'd put a gun on his desk that morning. Please, sit. Celine took the chair beside Julian, across from Kyle. Their eyes met. He gave nothing away. Eli stared at his plate, didn't look up. I thought we should have a proper family meal, Jinsu said as servers appeared with the first course. Now that Celine is officially joining us, it's important that she understands how we operate. How do you operate? Celine asked. Jinsu smiled. We're honest with each other. Within these walls, we don't perform. We don't lie. We speak truth, no matter how ugly. That's a nice philosophy. It's not philosophy. It's survival. Jinsu tasted his soup. Julian, tell Celine what you did to secure the board's confidence. Julian's jaw tightened. Father, tell her. Silence. Then Julian set down his spoon. I created leverage, found information on each board member that they'd prefer to keep private, made sure they understood that voting against my ascension would be unwise. You blackmailed them, Celine said. I ensured their loyalty. Same thing, Jinsu turned to Kale. And you? What have you done to undermine your brother? Kale's expression didn't change. I've documented every illegal transaction, every bribe, every threat, built a case that could put him in prison for 30 years. And yet you haven't released it. Why? Because I'm trying to save the family, not destroy it. Jinsu laughed. You're trying to save yourself. You think if you can expose Julian, I'll name you successor instead. But you're wrong. He looked at Celine. Your turn. What are you hiding? Celine's heart hammered. Nothing. Everyone's hiding something. Jinsu's eyes were sharp. Kael is hiding evidence. Julian is hiding bodies. What are you hiding, Miss Carter? The USB drive screamed from miles away. The files, the proof, the weapon she'd been given by a woman who might already be dead. Fear, Celine said quietly. I'm hiding the fact that I'm terrified every second I'm in this house, that I know I'm trapped, that I understand if I make one wrong move, I'll disappear like Michelle Park. The table went silent. Eli looked up for the first time. His eyes were old, knowing. Finally! Jinsu raised his glass. Truth. That's all I ask. That's all any of us should ask. He drank. The problem with lies is they require maintenance. You have to remember what you said, who you said it to, build structures to support the fiction. But truth? Truth is simple. Truth is clean. Then tell me the truth, Celine said. What happened to Julian's mother? Julian's hand slammed on the table. Don't. The brakes on her car failed, Jinsu said calmly. She was driving too fast, lost control, died on impact. That's the official story. What's the truth? Jinsu set down his glass. The truth is she wanted to take my sons and leave, wanted to destroy everything I'd built because she'd developed a conscience. So I gave her a choice. Stay and live. Leave and die. He paused. She chose wrong. The words hung in the air like smoke. Eli made a small sound, almost a whimper. Kale's jaw was rigid. You've never admitted that before. I'm dying. What does it matter? Jinsu looked at Celine. You wanted truth. There it is. I killed my wife, or rather, I had her killed. The mechanic who tampered with her brakes is at the bottom of the East River. The investigator who ruled it an accident retired to the Bahamas with a very generous pension, and my sons learned a valuable lesson about the cost of betrayal. Julian was pale. Father, Mike? You knew. Jinsu's voice was flat. You were 12, but you knew. I saw it in your face at the funeral, the understanding. And instead of hating me, you wanted to become me. He turned to Kael. While you decided to oppose everything I stood for, to build a case against your own family. Both of you thinking you could escape what we are. What are we? Kael's voice was rough. Monsters. Jinsu's smile was terrible. Built from blood and necessity. And the sooner everyone at this table accepts that, the sooner we can stop pretending we're anything else. Celine's hands were shaking. She gripped her napkin tight enough to tear. Why are you telling us this? Why now? Because I'm testing you. Jinsu stood, moved around the table, stopped behind Celine's chair. Everyone who joins this family faces the same test. Can you hear the truth and still stay? Can you look at monsters and call them family? His hand settled on her shoulder. Heavy, proprietary. Julian's mother failed. Michelle Park failed. Let's see if you're stronger than they were. He moved to a cabinet, pulled out a teapot and cups, began preparing tea with deliberate precision. This is Gyokbo green tea, he said, from a region near where I grew up. My mother used to make it every evening, said it promoted clarity, peace. He poured 5 cups. I've added something special tonight, a little experiment. He set a cup in front of each person. Celine stared at hers. The tea was pale green, fragrant, completely ordinary, completely deadly. One of these cups is poisoned, Jinsu said pleasantly. Fatal within 60 seconds of consumption. The rest are perfectly safe. Eli started crying, quiet, tears running down his face. This is insane, Kael said. Even for you. This is clarity. Jinsu sat down. Everyone at this table has been lying, plotting, building cases and collecting evidence and planning betrayals. So now we stop planning. We act. He picked up his own cup. I'll go first. He drank, emptied the entire cup. Nothing happened. He set it down. Safe. Who's next? No one moved. If no one drinks in the next 30 seconds, I'll assume you're all cowards. And cowards don't belong in this family. Jinsu pulled out his gun, set it on the table. Drink or die. Choose. Julian reached for his cup. His hand was shaking. Wait. Celine's voice cut through the tension. This is about loyalty, about trust, about proving we're willing to die for this family. Very perceptive. Then let me drink first. Celine picked up her cup. Because I'm the one everyone doubts. I'm the outsider, the one who doesn't belong. So I'll prove I'm all in. Celine, don't... Kael started. But Celine had already lifted the cup to her lips. She thought about Michelle Park, about Julian's mother, about every woman who'd tried to survive by playing the rules of men who made survival impossible. She thought about the USB drive, the files, the evidence that could bring this family to its knees. She thought about Eli, crying silently, trapped in a hell he'd never chosen. And she drank. The tea was bitter, earthy. It slid down her throat like swallowing stones. She set down the cup, waited. Her heart hammered. Her vision blurred at the edges. She couldn't tell if it was poison or pure terror. 10 seconds, 20, 30. Jinsu was watching her with something that might have been respect. 40 seconds, 50. Celine's chest felt tight. Her hands started to tingle. 60. Nothing. Safe. Jinsu smiled. Well done. Julian, your turn. Julian picked up his cup, drank without hesitation, set it down. They waited. 60 seconds passed. Safe. Kael went next. Then Eli, who could barely hold the cup steady. All safe. 4 empty cups, 1 full. Jinsu looked at the remaining cup. Interesting. The poison was real. I prepared it myself. But it seems fate has other plans. He picked up the final cup, held it to the light. Or perhaps, he said quietly, there never was any poison. Perhaps this was all about seeing who would drink anyway. Who would risk everything to prove their loyalty. He poured the tea onto the floor. You all passed. Congratulations. Celine couldn't breathe, couldn't process what had just happened. The room spun. Jinsu stood. Dinner is over. Tomorrow, the board votes. Julian will be named CEO. And all of you, he gestured to the table, will stand beside him. United, loyal, a family that doesn't break. He left. Eli ran, disappeared into the house like smoke. Julian was staring at his empty cup. He's getting worse, the cancer, it's affecting his judgment. His judgment was always like this, Kael said flatly. You just didn't want to see it. Kael, enough. Kael stood, looked at Celine. We need to talk. Alone. She's not going anywhere with you, Julian said. Yes, she is. Celine stood on legs that barely held her. Because I need air, and your brother is going to help me get it. She walked out before Julian could stop her. Kael followed. They went to the gardens, far enough from the house that cameras couldn't see them clearly. The night air was cold, clean, nothing like the poisoned atmosphere inside. That wasn't a test, Celine said. That was a threat. He was showing us he could kill any of us whenever he wants. Yes. And you're still trying to save this family? Kael was quiet for a long moment. I'm trying to save Eli. The family is already dead. Then help me destroy it. Celine pulled out her phone, showed him the cloud storage links, the files Margaret had given her, the evidence. I have everything. Financial records, witness statements, proof of your mother's murder, proof of what happened to Michelle. All I need is someone who can verify it. Someone the authorities will believe. Kael stared at the screen. Where did you get this? Margaret Chen, before your father solved her. Margaret is alive. I moved her this morning. New identity, new city. KL's expression was unreadable. But if you release this, you won't be. Julian will know it came from you, will track you down, will kill you slowly enough that you beg for mercy. Then what do I do? Play the perfect fiancé for 6 months and hope he gets bored? No. Kael pulled out his own phone. You play the perfect fiancé for 3 more days, long enough for me to position assets, to move Eli somewhere safe, to build a case that doesn't just expose Julian, it exposes everyone, including my father. Why 3 days? Because in 3 days there's a family ceremony, ancestral rites. Everyone will be there. Guards, staff, the entire board. Kael's eyes were hard. And that's when we burn it all down. Celine's breath caught. How? With evidence so overwhelming that even the authorities my father owns can't ignore it. With testimony from Margaret and others who've been waiting years for someone to believe them. With you standing in front of cameras telling the world exactly what this family is. I'll be killed. Probably, but you'll take them with you. Kael stepped closer. Or you can run. Right now. I'll help you disappear. Give you money, new identity. You'll never have to see Julian again. And Eli stays trapped, like he's been trapped his whole life. Celine closed her eyes. Thought about the boy playing chess alone. About his mother who'd disappeared into away. About all the people the Choi family had destroyed because they could. She thought about the girl she'd been. Growing up in the Patterson houses, learning that the world didn't protect people like her. That survival meant being harder than the thing trying to kill you. 3 days, she said. Then we end this. Kael nodded, started to walk away. Wait, Celine grabbed his arm. Why are you really doing this? It's not just about saving Eli. It's something else. Kael looked at her hand on his arm. Because I'm tired of being a monster, and destroying the family is the only way to stop becoming my father. He pulled free, disappeared into the darkness. Celine stood alone in the garden, surrounded by perfectly manicured hedges and the distant sound of the city. 3 days, 72 hours until she either saved herself or died trying. She walked back into the house, found Julian waiting in the foyer. Where did you go? His voice was sharp. I told you, I needed air. Your father's little game was... My father is dying and scared and lashing out. You need to ignore it. Need to remember that in 72 hours, he'll be irrelevant and I'll be in control. Julian pulled her close. And when I'm in control, things will be different. Better. I won't play mind games. I won't test you. I'll just expect loyalty. And if I'm loyal, then you'll have everything you ever wanted. His lips found her neck. Power, security, a life most people can't imagine. Celine let him hold her, let him believe she was convinced. But her mind was racing. 3 days, the ancestral ceremony, the moment when the entire family would be gathered in one place, the moment when everything would burn. Julian drove her home, walked her to her door, kissed her like he meant it. Get some rest, he said. Tomorrow's a big day. Board vote at 9, press conference at 11, celebration dinner at 7. You'll need your strength. I'll be ready. He left. Celine locked her door, all 3 locks. Then she pulled out her laptop and opened the encrypted files. Margaret's evidence was overwhelming, but it wasn't complete. It showed Julian's crimes, Jinsu's murders, the family's corruption, but it didn't show the one thing that would make the authorities move fast enough to protect her. It didn't show the Song-Soo clan connection. The ring on her finger, the one Julian had given her, belonged to Park Min-seo, a man serving 25 years for racketeering, extortion, and 3 counts of murder. A man whose organization had been dismantled by a federal task force 2 years ago. But the ring had gone missing before the arrests, never recovered, which meant Julian had it, had kept it, had given it to Celine like a trophy. She photographed her hand, the ring catching light, the serial number etched in the band, tiny, almost invisible, but there. She uploaded the photo to the cloud, added it to the evidence file. Then she sent a message to the one journalist who'd asked about Michelle at the press conference, the young woman who'd been brave enough to demand answers. I have proof. About the Choi family, about Michelle Park, about crimes that go back decades. Meet me at the ancestral ceremony in 3 days. Bring cameras, bring witnesses. Don't come alone. She hit send before she could second guess. Then she opened a second message. To Kyle. I'm not waiting 3 days. I'm ending this at the ceremony. With or without you. The response came immediately. If you do this alone, you're dead. I'm already dead. I'm just choosing how. Celine, help me or don't, but I'm done being a victim. She closed the laptop, sat in the dark of her apartment. Tomorrow, Julian would become CEO, would gain control of an empire built on blood, would stand in front of cameras and smile like he'd earned it. But in 3 days, in 72 hours, Celine Carter was going to do something she'd never done before. She was going to stop surviving and start fighting. The board vote took 6 minutes. Unanimous approval. Julian Choi, new CEO of Choi Enterprises. The press conference was flawless, Julian confident, humble, ready to lead the family into a new era of transparency and growth. Celine stood beside him, smiling, wearing the ring that had once belonged to a crime lord. Nobody noticed. Nobody cared. By evening, the news had moved on. The young journalist who'd asked about Michelle was nowhere to be found. Her outlet claimed she'd taken a sudden leave of absence. Celine knew better. The celebration dinner was private, just Julian, Jinsu, Kyle, and Celine. Eli was absent. Sick, Julian said. The stress of the past few days. But when Celine excused herself to use the restroom, she found the boy in his room, packing a bag. Where are you going? She whispered. Eli looked up. His eyes were empty. Away. Like my mom. Uncle Kyle is sending me somewhere safe. When? Tomorrow, before the ceremony. He zipped the bag. You should go too, before they kill you like they killed everyone else. I can't. Why not? Because someone has to stop them. Eli studied her face. Then he reached into his nightstand, pulled out a flash drive. My mom gave me this. Before she left, said if anything happened to her, I should give it to someone who could use it. Celine took the drive with shaking hands. What's on it? Everything. Videos, recordings, proof of what they did to her, what they've done to everyone. Eli's voice cracked. Use it, please. Make them pay. Celine pulled the boy into a hug. He was shaking, small, broken by a family that destroyed everything it touched. I will, she whispered. I promise. She went back to dinner, smiled through dessert, let Julian take her home. That night she watched the videos on Eli's flash drive, footage of Julian's mother, terrified, explaining how Jinsu had threatened her, had shown her what happened to people who left. Footage of Eli's mother begging for her life, while Julian stood in the background, expressionless. Footage of Michelle Park tied to a chair, sobbing, asking why. And footage of the answers. Julian's voice, calm, explaining that she'd become a liability, that liabilities had to be eliminated. Celine watched until she couldn't anymore, until rage replaced fear, until she understood finally that there was no negotiating with monsters. You either killed them or they killed you. She uploaded everything to the cloud, sent copies to 5 different journalists, set them to auto-release if she didn't check in within 24 hours. Then she sent a final message to Kyle. Tomorrow. The ceremony. I'm ending this. If you want to help, be there. If you want to run, I understand. His response came at dawn. I'll be there. But Celine, once we do this, there's no going back. Good, she typed. I don't want to go back. She dressed carefully, the gown Julian had chosen for the ceremony, deep red, like blood, like warning, the stolen ring on her finger, and hidden in her jacket, a recording device, a camera, tools to capture everything. She was done being a victim, done being a pawn. Today, Celine Carter was going to do what every woman before her had tried and failed. She was going to burn the Choi family to the ground, and she was going to make sure the whole world watched. The ancestral hall was built 2 centuries ago by men who believed blood and stone were eternal. It stood at the eastern edge of the estate, separate from the main house, surrounded by gardens that bloomed even in autumn. The architecture was deliberate, Circular walls designed to amplify sound, a domed ceiling that trapped voices and threw them back amplified. Acoustics built for ceremony, for reverence, for confessions that couldn't be hidden. Celine arrived at dawn with the recording devices strapped to her body like a second skin, microphone hidden in her necklace, camera embedded in the jeweled clasp of her clutch, both feeding to cloud storage that would survive even if she didn't. Her hands were steady as she checked the connections, steadier than they'd been in weeks. Fear had burned away sometime during the night, replaced by something colder, sharper. Purpose. Julian's car pulled up at 6:30. He looked rested, confident. A man who'd spent the night sleeping peacefully while Celine had watched videos of women begging for their lives. "You're early," he said, kissing her cheek. His cologne was expensive, clean. It made her want to vomit. I wanted to make sure everything was perfect. "It will be. Father's already inside making preparations. The board arrives at 8. The ceremony starts at 9. Julian's hand found her waist, possessive, always possessive. "After today, everything changes. The family accepts my leadership, the ancestors receive their offerings, and you officially become part of the legacy." Lucky me. Julian's smile tightened. "You've been distant, since the dinner, since Father's little test." "Your father threatened to poison us. I'm processing." He was making a point about loyalty. Julian's grip tightened. "A point you seem to have missed, because Kael tells me you've been asking questions about my mother, about Michelle, about things that are none of your business." Celine's pulse kicked up, but she kept her voice level. "Kael's lying." "Is he?" Julian pulled her closer, close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his eyes, the emptiness beneath. "Because I'm starting to think my brother was right about you, that you're not here to help me. You're here to destroy me. If I wanted to destroy you, I'd have gone to the police." "The police don't scare me. I own half of them." Julian's thumb pressed against her pulse point, feeling her heartbeat, counting the lies. "But betrayal? That scares me. Because betrayal means I misjudged you, and I hate being wrong." Celine met his eyes, let him see truth mixed with fear in exactly the right proportions. "I'm not betraying you. I'm terrified of you. There's a difference." Julian studied her face for a long moment. Then he released her. "Good. Stay terrified. It keeps you smart." He checked his watch. "I need to help Father. You stay here. Greet the board when they arrive. Smile. Look like you belong." He walked toward the hall. Celine waited until he was inside. Then she pulled out her phone, sent a text to the journalist. "It's happening. Get here. Back entrance. Bring backup." The response came immediately. "We're 10 minutes out. Stay safe." Celine pocketed the phone, looked at the ancestral hall, white stone glowing in the early light, windows designed to let ancestors watch the living, doors carved with symbols of protection that had never protected anyone. She walked to the back of the building, found Kael waiting in the shadows. "Eli's safe," he said without preamble. "Across state lines, new identity. He'll never see this family again." "Good. The evidence you uploaded, I verified it. Sent copies to federal prosecutors I trust. They're moving on warrants now, but it'll take time, hours, maybe days." Kael's expression was granite. "We need to keep Julian and Father here, keep them talking, keep them visible until the authorities arrive." "That's the plan." "It's a suicide plan." Kael grabbed her arm. "Once Julian realizes what you've done, he'll kill you. Not metaphorically. He'll put a bullet in your head and dump your body where no one will ever find it. Then you'll have to stop him." "I can't stop him and protect you at the same time." Celine pulled her arm free. "I'm not asking you to protect me. I'm asking you to make sure he doesn't run. That when the federal agents arrive, they find him here, surrounded by witnesses, with no way to lie his way out. And if he kills you before they get here, then make sure my death means something." Celine's voice was hard. "Make sure the evidence sticks. Make sure everyone knows what this family is." Kael was quiet. Then he nodded. "The ceremony has 3 parts: offerings to the ancestors, speeches from family elders. Then the new leader receives the family seal. That's when Julian will be most vulnerable, when he's standing in front of the entire board, accepting power. That's when you move. Move how? However you need to." Kael pulled out a small device, pressed it into her palm. Panic button. Triggers an alarm that'll bring security running. Use it if things go wrong. Things are already wrong. Then use it when they get worse. Kale looked toward the hall. I need to go inside, play my role, but Celine, he turned back. What you're doing? It's brave, stupid, but brave. Brave and stupid. Story of my life. He almost smiled. Then he was gone, disappearing into the hall through a side entrance. Celine stood alone, checked her recording devices one last time, made sure the camera was capturing, made sure the microphone was live. Then she walked to the front entrance. The board started arriving at 7:45, black cars, expensive suits, men and women who'd built fortunes on the foundation the Choi family provided. They greeted Celine with polite smiles and calculating eyes, each one assessing her worth, her usefulness, her potential to be leveraged. She smiled back, played the role. The perfect fiancé, the woman who'd reformed Julian Choi and made him suitable for leadership. By 8:30, everyone had arrived, 40 people. Enough witnesses that Julian couldn't silence them all. Enough cameras that the truth couldn't be buried. Jin-soo appeared at 8:45. He looked worse than Celine had ever seen him, skin gray, eyes hollow, moving like every step cost him. The cancer was winning, but his voice was still strong when he addressed the assembled crowd. Thank you for coming. Today we honor our ancestors and pass leadership to the next generation. This family has survived because we understand that power requires sacrifice. That legacy demands blood. He paused. My son Julian will lead us into the future, and I expect each of you to support him as you've supported me. Polite applause. Murmurs of agreement. Jin-soo's gaze found Celine. Held. We also welcome a new member to our family, Celine Carter, a woman who has proven her loyalty through trial and adversity. She will stand beside my son as he rebuilds what I've created. More applause. Celine felt the weight of every eye, every judgment. Julian appeared beside her, took her hand. Shall we? They entered the ancestral hall together. The interior was breathtaking, circular walls rising 3 stories, windows filtering morning light into columns of gold. At the center, an altar covered in offerings, fruit, flowers, incense burning in elaborate holders. And behind the altar, portraits of the dead. Generations of Choi family members staring down with expressions that range from pride to warning. Julian's mother was there, young, beautiful, frozen in a moment before she'd tried to escape. The crowd filed in, took seats in concentric rings around the altar. Jin-soo stood at the center. Kale to his right, Julian to his left, and Celine, standing slightly behind where fiancés were supposed to stand. Supportive, silent, decorative. The ceremony began. Jin-soo spoke in Korean first, long passages that Celine couldn't understand but felt in the way the room's acoustics amplified every syllable. Then he switched to English. We gather to honor those who came before, who built this family from nothing, who sacrificed everything so we could stand here in power and wealth. He lit incense. The smoke rose in spirals. We offer gratitude. We offer respect. We offer our continued commitment to the legacy they created. The board members bowed their heads, murmured responses in Korean. Celine's hand found the panic button in her pocket. Not yet. Wait for the right moment, Jin-soo continued. Today, I pass the seal of leadership to my son. Julian Choi will carry our family forward, will protect our interests, will ensure that the sacrifices of the past are not wasted. He pulled out a small box, opened it. Inside was a ring, gold, carved with symbols Celine didn't recognize, the family seal. Julian stepped forward, knelt before his father. Do you accept this responsibility? Jin-soo's voice echoed. Do you swear to protect this family above all else? To sacrifice anything, anyone, who threatens what we've built? I do. Julian's voice was steady. Do you understand that this power comes with a price? That leadership means making choices others cannot? That blood will be required? I understand. Jin-soo placed the ring on Julian's finger. Then rise. As the new head of the Choi family, Julian stood, turned to face the board. His smile was triumphant. That's when Celine moved. She stepped forward, into the space between Julian and the altar. Every head turned. I have something to say. Her voice carried in the circular room, amplified, impossible to ignore. Julian's smile froze. Celine, not now. Yes, now. She pulled out her phone. Because everyone here deserves to know the truth about the man they're following, about the family they're supporting. Jinsu's expression went cold. Miss Carter, this is not the time. This is exactly the time. Celine's hands were steady. Because you just asked Julian if he'd sacrifice anyone who threatens this family. And I want everyone to know what that sacrifice looks like. She pressed play on her phone. Eli's flash drive, the videos. Michelle Park's voice filled the hall, terrified, begging, asking why. And Julian's response, calm, clinical. Because you became a liability. The room went silent. Every board member staring at the phone, at Julian, at the truth playing out in real time. That's fabricated. Julian's voice was sharp. Deepfake, AI generated. She's trying to sabotage. There's more. Celine pulled out a second phone. Margaret's evidence. Financial records showing money flowing from Choi accounts to offshore holdings, to shell corporations, to the mechanic who'd tampered with the brakes on Julian's mother's car. Jinsu moved fast, faster than a dying man should be able to. His hand shot out, grabbed Celine's wrist, crushed the bones together until she dropped both phones. Enough! His voice was thunder. You've made a terrible mistake. Have I? Celine didn't flinch, didn't try to pull away. Because federal agents are on their way here right now, with warrants, with evidence, with testimony from witnesses you thought you'd silenced. She looked at the board members. Everyone in this room is about to be implicated in conspiracy, racketeering, murder. Unless you leave, right now, and cooperate with the investigation. Chaos erupted. Board members standing, shouting, pulling out phones, some heading for exits. Julian grabbed Celine, slammed her against the altar hard enough that her vision sparked. What did you do? I ended you. Blood trickled from her split lip. I gave prosecutors everything. Videos, financial records, testimony, enough to put you away for life. Julian's hand found her throat, squeezed. Then you just signed your death warrant. Maybe. Celine's vision was tunneling, going dark. But I'm taking you with me. Cale's voice cut through the chaos. Let her go. Julian didn't release his grip. Stay out of this, brother. I said let her go. Cale had a gun, trained on Julian's head. Now. Julian's fingers tightened. Celine couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The room was spinning. Then Jinsu spoke. Julian, release her. She's destroying us. She's already destroyed us. Jinsu's voice was tired, defeated. The moment she uploaded that evidence, we were finished. Killing her now just adds another body to the count. Julian's hand opened. Celine collapsed, gasping, her throat on fire. Jinsu looked at the board members still in the room. Leave, all of you. Cooperate with the investigation. Claim ignorance. Save yourselves. He turned to Kael. Take Celine. Get her out of here before your brother does something we can't undo. Father, go! Jinsu's roar echoed. Both of you, now! Kael grabbed Celine's arm, pulled her toward the exit, but Julian moved faster. He had a gun. Celine didn't see where it came from, didn't see him draw, just heard the shot that shattered the silence. Kael went down, blood spreading across his shoulder. No one leaves. Julian's voice was empty, mechanical. Not until I understand exactly what's been done, what's been said, what needs to be cleaned up. Celine dropped beside Kael, pressed her hands against the wound. Blood pulsed between her fingers. Too much blood. You shot your own brother, she whispered. He betrayed the family. Julian's gun swung toward her. Just like you, just like everyone who thought they could destroy us and walk away. Sirens cut through the air, distant but getting closer. Federal agents, finally. Julian heard them too. His expression shifted, calculated. We have maybe 5 minutes before they breach the gates. 5 minutes to control the narrative. There is no narrative. Celine's voice was hoarse. They have everything. Every crime. Every murder. It's over. It's never over. Julian grabbed her hair, yanked her head back, put the gun against her temple. Because the only evidence they have is on devices they haven't seized yet. Servers they haven't accessed. And if those servers were to suddenly crash, if that evidence were to disappear, then it's just allegations. Conspiracy theories. Nothing they can prove. I have backups. Where? Celine smiled, blood on her teeth. Everywhere. Cloud storage, email drafts, physical copies with 3 different journalists. Kill me and they auto-release. You'll be on every news channel by tonight. Julian's finger tightened on the trigger. You're bluffing. Test me. The sirens were louder now. Maybe 2 minutes out, Jinsu moved to the altar, sat down heavily. It's done, Julian. Accept it. We're finished. No. Julian's voice cracked. No. I won't let some project's girl with a conscience destroy everything you built, everything I've worked for. Then what's your plan? Jinsu's laugh was bitter. Shoot her? Shoot the agents when they arrive? Start a war you can't win? I can control this. I just need time. There is no time. Kale's voice was weak but steady, blood pooling beneath him. It's over. Let her go. Turn yourself in. Maybe you'll survive prison. I won't survive prison. They'll kill me within a week. Sangsu clan. Rivals. Everyone I've destroyed coming for revenge. Julian's hand was shaking. The gun pressed harder against Celine's skull. So if I'm going down, I'm taking everyone with me. The main doors burst open. Federal agents in tactical gear. Weapons drawn. Shouting commands that echoed in the circular room. Drop the weapon. Drop it now. Julian didn't move. His arm locked around Celine's throat, gun still against her head. Stay back! His voice was ragged. Stay back or I kill her! The agents fanned out, red laser sights painting Julian's chest. There's no way out. Release the hostage and surrender. There's always a way out. Julian started backing toward a side entrance, dragging Celine with him. You want to negotiate? Fine, clear the hall. Give me a car. Safe passage to the airport, or I paint these walls with her brain. Celine's vision was graying, his arm crushing her windpipe. She couldn't breathe, couldn't speak, but she could move. Her hand found the panic button still in her pocket, pressed it. Nothing happened. No alarm, no cavalry, just Julian's laugh against her ear. Did you really think I'd let you keep a working panic button? I switched it out yesterday, while you were sleeping. His breath was hot, rancid. I knew you'd try something, knew you couldn't be trusted, so I prepared. The agents were talking, negotiating, trying to de-escalate, but Julian was backing toward the exit, step by step, dragging Celine with him. Kale tried to stand, collapsed, too much blood loss. Jinsu just watched, his expression unreadable. They reached the side door. Julian kicked it open. Bright sunlight flooded in, and standing in that sunlight was a woman Celine had never seen before. Young, Asian, holding a camera. The journalist. Julian Choi, she said clearly, camera rolling. Do you have any comment on the murder of Michelle Park? On the death of your mother? On the charges of racketeering and conspiracy? Julian's grip loosened, just for a second, just enough. Celine drove her elbow back, into his ribs. Felt something crack. Julian's gun swung toward the journalist. The federal agents fired. 3 shots, maybe 4. Celine couldn't tell. She was falling. Julian's body collapsing on top of her, blood everywhere, hot, sticky. She couldn't tell if it was his or hers. Hands pulled her free, agents shouting, someone checking her pulse. She pushed them away, crawled to where Kael lay. You're alive, she gasped. Don't you dare die. Wasn't planning on it. Kael's smile was weak. Did we win? Celine looked around. Julian wasn't moving. Federal agents securing the scene. The journalist still filming, capturing everything. Yeah, she whispered. We won. Then the world went dark. Celine woke up in a hospital. White walls. Machines beeping. Her throat felt like she'd swallowed glass. A nurse noticed her eyes open. Easy. Don't try to talk. You've got severe bruising to your trachea. You're lucky to be alive. Celine tried to sit up. Pain lanced through her ribs. I said easy. The nurse pressed a button. Doctor's on the way. You've been out for 14 hours. 14 hours. Celine's hand flew to her neck, found bandages, no pendant, no recording device. My things. The federal agents took everything. Evidence. They said to tell you that all your recordings survived. They have everything they need. The door opened. Not a doctor. A woman in a dark suit, FBI badge clipped to her belt. Miss Carter, I'm Special Agent Rodriguez. I need to ask you some questions. Julian is dead, died at the scene. 3 gunshot wounds. Rodriguez pulled out a recorder. But I need your statement. Everything that happened, everything you know about the Choi family's operations. Selene talked for 2 hours, her voice giving out halfway through. The agent, patient, recording everything, asking follow-up questions that made it clear she knew more than she was saying. When they finished, Rodriguez stood. You did good work. Dangerous, stupid, but good. The evidence you provided, combined with what we already had, is enough to dismantle the entire organization. Jin-Soo Choi is in custody. Kael Choi is recovering under guard. We've arrested 14 board members and frozen assets worth over $2 billion. And Eli? Safe. We're working with social services to ensure he stays that way. He'll never have to see this family again. Rodriguez paused at the door. You should know, there are people who aren't happy about what you've done. Associates of the family, people who've lost a lot of money. You'll need protection. Witness protection, maybe. I'm not hiding. Then you're a fool. Rodriguez's expression softened. But a brave one. If you need anything, if anyone threatens you, call me. Direct line. She handed Selene a card. And Miss Carter? Thank you. Women like Michelle Park, like Julian's mother, they deserve justice. You gave them that. She left. Selene sat alone in the hospital room, looked at her hands, still shaking, still covered in Band-Aids from where Julian had crushed her wrists. Her phone, a new one provided by the FBI, buzzed. Unknown number. I saw the news. You're either the bravest person I know or the dumbest. Maybe both. Margaret Selene smiled, typed back. Brave. Definitely brave. Another message. This one from Kael. 3 rooms down. Come visit when you can walk without falling over. Selene stood. Her legs wobbled but held. She made her way down the hall. Found Kael's room. He looked terrible, pale, hooked up to machines, bandages covering most of his upper body. But he was alive. You look like hell, she said. You should see the other guy. Kael's smile was weak. Oh, wait. You can't. Because he's dead. Thanks to you. Thanks to us. Kael shifted, winced. The feds say the evidence you collected is going to take down everyone. Not just Julian and Father, the entire network. Judges, politicians, police captains. Everyone they owned. Good. It's going to take years. Trials, testimony. You'll have to relive all of this. Over and over. I know. Kael was quiet for a moment. Eli asked about you. Wanted to know if you were okay. Tell him I'm fine. Tell him he's free now. He never has to be a Choi again. What about you? Are you free? Selene thought about the question, about the USB drive still in evidence lockup, about the videos that would haunt her forever, about Michelle Park and Julian's mother and every woman who'd tried to survive the Choi family and failed. No, she said quietly, I'll never be free of this. But at least I'm alive. That's more than they got. She turned to leave. Selene, Kael's voice stopped her. What you did, testifying against your own fiancé, bringing down an empire. Most people couldn't do that. Most people would have run. I'm not most people. No, you're not. Kael's expression was unreadable, which is why I need to ask. What happens now, to you? Selene looked out the window. The city stretched beyond, millions of people living lives that didn't include ancestral halls and blood sacrifices and men who thought power was a birthright. I go back to my studio, teach manners to people who think they're better than me, build a life that doesn't involve marble floors and stolen rings, she paused. And I survive, because that's what I do. She left before Kael could respond, but she didn't go back to her room. She went to the hospital chapel, empty, quiet, a space where people came to pray or cry or make sense of senseless things. Selene sat in the back row. Let the silence wrap around her. She'd won. She'd destroyed the Choi family, had brought justice for Michelle and Julian's mother and every victim the empire had created. But the cost was written in bruises and scars, and the way her hand still shook when she thought about Julian's gun against her temple. Her phone buzzed. The journalist. Your story is everywhere, front page of every major outlet. People are calling you a hero. Selene didn't feel like a hero. She felt like a survivor, barely. She typed back, "Just tell the truth. That's all I ask. Tell people what this family really was. Already done." And Celine? "Thank you for being brave enough to fight back." Celine closed her eyes, thought about the girl she'd been, growing up in the Patterson houses, learning that the world didn't protect people like her. That girl had survived by being invisible, by not making waves. But Celine Carter wasn't that girl anymore. She'd stopped being invisible the moment she'd walked into that ancestral hall with recording devices strapped to her body and evidence that could topple an empire. She'd stopped surviving and started fighting. And now, sitting in a hospital chapel with her throat bruised and her ribs cracked, and the Choi family in ruins behind her, Celine understood something fundamental. You didn't escape monsters by running. You escaped them by becoming something they couldn't break, something harder than violence, something sharper than fear. You escaped them by refusing to die. And Celine Carter had survived too much to die now. She stood, walked back to her room, ignored the pain, ignored the fear, because in 72 hours she'd be discharged. She'd walk out of this hospital into a world where the Choi family was headline news, and Julian was a corpse, and Jin-soo was facing life in prison. She'd walk back into her studio in the Bronx and teach manners to people who'd never know what she'd done. And she'd live. Not happily, not easily, but fully, completely, on her own terms. Because Celine Carter had learned the most important lesson the Choi family never understood. Survival wasn't about power. It was about refusing to let powerful people define who you were. And she was done being defined by anyone but herself. The war was over. She'd won. Now came the harder part, learning to live with the victory. The trial lasted 8 weeks. Celine sat in the witness box for 3 days straight, her voice still hoarse from the bruising, recounting every conversation, every threat, every moment she'd spent inside the Choi family's world. The defense attorneys tried to break her, suggested she was a scorned woman, a gold digger who'd fabricated evidence when Julian refused to marry her. They showed the jury photos of her wearing designer clothes, dining at expensive restaurants, living a life she could never afford on an etiquette tutor's salary. But then the prosecution played the videos. Eli's mother begging, Michelle Park sobbing, Julian's voice calm and clinical, explaining why liabilities had to be eliminated. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Jin-soo Choi received 3 consecutive life sentences. No possibility of parole. The man who'd built an empire from blood and sacrifice would die in a cell smaller than his bathroom, surrounded by men who knew exactly what he'd done and exactly how much his protection was worth. Nothing. The board members who'd cooperated received reduced sentences. The ones who'd tried to hide evidence got decades. Asset seizures dismantled what remained of the Choi financial empire, billions frozen, redistributed to victims' families, to organizations that fought human trafficking and organized crime. Kyle testified against his father, against the family he'd tried to save. He received immunity in exchange for cooperation, but the cost was written in his eyes every time Celine saw him in the courthouse hallways. He destroyed his own legacy, had chosen justice over blood. Some prices couldn't be calculated in years or dollars. Eli never testified. The prosecutors deemed him too traumatized, too young. But his flash drive, the evidence his mother had given him before she disappeared, became Exhibit A in multiple cases. The boy was placed with a family 3 states away, a couple who'd never heard of the Choi Empire and didn't care about marble floors or ancestral halls. He sent Celine 1 letter 3 weeks after the verdicts came down. "Thank you for keeping your promise. I sleep better now. E." She kept it in her wallet, carried it like proof that some things could be saved. Celine was discharged from the hospital on a Tuesday. The FBI offered witness protection, new identity, new city, a chance to disappear completely. She declined. She'd spent 28 years building a life in the Bronx, building a name that meant something beyond survival. She wasn't going to let the Choi family take that from her too. But walking back into her studio apartment felt like walking into a mausoleum. Everything was exactly as she'd left it. The laptop on her kitchen table, the dress Julian had bought her hanging in the closet, the diamond pendant he'd given her sitting in a jewelry box she couldn't bring herself to open. Evidence. All of it. Cataloged and returned after the trial. Celine looked at the pendant for a long time. Then she took it to a pawn shop in Queens, sold it for a fraction of what it was worth, used the money to pay 3 months' rent in advance, and donate the rest to a women's shelter. Blood money. But at least now it would save lives instead of marking them for destruction. Her studio had 6 missed calls, 4 from clients asking when she'd resume sessions, 2 from journalists offering money for exclusive interviews. She deleted them all. Then she sat at her kitchen table and opened her laptop, started typing. Not a memoir, not a tell-all, just a guide. Surviving Spaces You Weren't Born Into, a practical manual for outsiders. Everything she'd learned, everything she'd taught, every technique for reading powerful people, for understanding the difference between genuine respect and performance, for knowing when to smile and when to run. She wrote for 12 hours straight, until her fingers cramped and her eyes burned and the words blurred together. Then her phone rang. Kyle. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. How are you? His voice was different, quieter, like something fundamental had broken and healed wrong. Surviving. You? Same. A pause. I'm leaving the city. The country, actually. There's nothing left for me here. The family's gone. The business is dismantled. I'm just a ghost haunting a mansion nobody wants. Where will you go? Somewhere without extradition treaties. He laughed, but it was hollow. Kidding, mostly. I don't know. Somewhere I can start over. Be someone who isn't a Choi. Celine understood that better than she wanted to. Is that possible? Starting over? I hope so. Because I can't keep being what I was. Kale's voice cracked. I spent 35 years trying to save a family that didn't want saving, trying to protect people who saw protection as weakness, and it cost me everything. My mother, my nephew's childhood, you, almost. You didn't cost me anything. Julian did. I brought you into it, gave you that folder, put you in a position where you had to choose between survival and silence. He was quiet for a long moment. I'm sorry for all of it. Don't be. Celine looked out her window at the city lights, at the world that had kept turning while her life had imploded. You gave me a choice. That's more than Julian ever did. What will you do now? Teach, write, build something that can't be taken away by men who think power is a birthright. She paused. And testify. They're calling me back in 6 months for the appeals, then again for the civil suits. I'll be reliving this for years. You don't have to. You could disappear, change your name, start over like I'm doing. No. Celine's voice was firm. I'm done running, done hiding. The Choi family tried to erase Michelle Park, tried to erase your mother, tried to erase me. I won't let them succeed. I'll stand in every courtroom, tell every reporter, make sure the world knows exactly what they were. Kale was silent. Then, you're stronger than all of us. I'm just tired of being afraid. They talked for another 20 minutes. About nothing. About everything. About the strange gravity of surviving something that should have killed you. When they hung up, Celine felt something shift. Not healing, not closure, just the understanding that some chapters end whether you're ready or not. She never heard from Kyle again. The media circus lasted 3 months. Every outlet wanted her story. Producers offered 6 figures for film rights. Publishers dangled book deals. Celine turned them all down. She gave exactly 1 interview. To the young journalist who'd shown up at the ancestral hall with a camera and questions nobody else dared ask. They met at a coffee shop in the Bronx, the same neighborhood where Celine had grown up, where she'd learned that survival meant being invisible until it was time to be seen. Why me? The journalist asked. Her name was Sarah Kim, 26, hungry in the way that reminded Celine of herself 10 years ago. Because you asked the right questions, because you didn't care that asking them might get you killed. Celine stirred her coffee. Because you deserve the story more than some producer who wants to turn it into entertainment. They talked for 4 hours. Celine told her everything. About Julian's courtship, about the moment she realized she was a pawn, about the choice to fight instead of run. Sarah recorded it all, took notes in shorthand, asked follow-up questions that showed she understood the difference between facts and truth. When they finished, Sarah set down her pen. Can I ask you something off the record? Sure. Do you regret it? Any of it? Celine thought about the question, about the bruises that had finally faded, about the nightmares that hadn't, About Michelle Park's face in those videos and the weight of knowing she'd been too late to save her. I regret meeting Julian in the first place. Regret trusting him. Regret not seeing what he was until it was almost too late. She paused. But I don't regret fighting back. I don't regret choosing to burn it all down. Because if I hadn't, Eli would still be trapped. Kyle would still be trying to save the unsavable. And Julian would still be destroying women who thought they could survive him. So it was worth it. I didn't say that. Celine's smile was sad. I said I don't regret it. There's a difference. Worth implies some kind of cosmic balance, that the good outweighed the bad. But there is no balance. There's just survival and the cost of it. Sarah's article ran 2 weeks later. Front page. 7,000 words, every detail, every truth. It won awards, sparked congressional hearings, became required reading in criminal justice courses. Celine read it once, then never looked at it again. She had enough ghosts without inviting more. 6 months after the trial, Celine reopened her studio. Word had spread about what she'd done, how she'd infiltrated one of New York's most powerful families and brought it down from the inside. Her client list exploded. CEOs wanting to learn how to read boardrooms, lawyers wanting to understand jury psychology, politicians wanting to project authenticity while hiding their true intentions. She turned down most of them, kept only the ones who reminded her of herself, the outsiders, the people clawing their way up from nothing, trying to navigate spaces built to exclude them. She taught them what she'd learned, how to hold yourself in rooms designed to make you small, how to speak truth to power without getting destroyed, how to recognize when someone was using you before it was too late. And she taught them the most important lesson of all. Survival wasn't about becoming what powerful people wanted. It was about refusing to disappear when they decided you were inconvenient. One of her students was a woman named Lisa, mid-30s, brilliant. She'd just accepted a job at a hedge fund run by men who saw her as a diversity hire. She came to Celine's studio every Tuesday, learning how to command respect in meetings, how to push back without seeming aggressive, how to build alliances in hostile territory. After their 5th session, Lisa asked the question everyone eventually asked. Was it worth it, taking down the Choi family? Celine had answered this question a dozen times, to journalists, to prosecutors, to herself in the mirror at 3 a.m. when the nightmares wouldn't stop. But Lisa deserved honesty. It cost me everything, Celine said. My sense of safety, my ability to trust people, my belief that doing the right thing leads to happy endings. She paused. But it also gave me something I'd never had before, proof that I could survive the worst thing I could imagine, that I could walk into hell and walk back out. And that's enough? Some days. Celine's smile was tired. Some days it has to be. Lisa nodded, didn't push further. That night, Celine got a message from an unknown number. The cemetery. Midnight. Come alone. Every instinct screamed trap. Every survival mechanism she'd built told her to delete the message, call the FBI, hide. But she'd learned something about herself in the Choi family's ancestral hall. She'd learned that hiding just delayed the inevitable. So she went. The cemetery was in Queens, old, overgrown, headstones dating back to when the city was smaller, when death was something people acknowledged instead of outsourcing to funeral homes and crematoriums. Celine arrived at 11:50, found the entrance unlocked, walked through rows of dead strangers until she reached the newer section. And there, standing in front of a fresh grave, was a woman she'd only seen in photographs. Michelle Park, alive. Celine stopped breathing. You're dead. Julian killed you. The videos were real. Michelle's voice was rough, damaged. But they weren't the end of the story. She turned. Celine could see scars now, on her throat, her wrists, the kind that came from zip ties and desperate struggles. Julian did try to kill me, kept me in a basement for 3 weeks, tortured me, made those videos to show other women what happened when you betrayed the family. Michelle's eyes were hollow. But he made a mistake. He got sloppy, left me alone with a guard who was newer, younger, who didn't understand yet that Choi family prisoners don't survive. How did you escape? I didn't. The guard let me go, gave me cash, a fake ID, told me to run and never look back. Michelle's laugh was broken. So I did. Changed my name, changed my face, and Spent 8 months in hiding while Julian told everyone I'd moved to California. Why are you here? Why now? Michelle pulled out a phone, showed Celine a news article. Julian Choi dead. Empire dismantled. Empire. Because you did what I couldn't. You survived him. You destroyed him. You made sure he'd never hurt anyone else. Tears tracked down Michelle's face. And I needed to thank you, to tell you that what you did, it saved more than just yourself. Celine felt something break inside her chest. I was too late. For you, for Julian's mother, for it. You weren't too late for the next woman, or the one after that. Michelle grabbed her hands. Julian would have kept going, kept destroying, kept collecting broken women like trophies, but you stopped him. You made sure his last victim was actually his last. They stood in the cemetery surrounded by the dead, two women who'd survived a monster and lived to tell the truth. What will you do now? Celine asked. Keep running, keep hiding. The guard who helped me, he disappeared 2 weeks after. Julian's people found him. I won't make the same mistake. Michelle released Celine's hands. But I wanted you to know, wanted you to understand that every choice you made, every risk you took, it mattered. You're a hero, even if you don't feel like one. She walked away, disappeared into the darkness between graves. Celine stood alone, looked at the fresh headstone Michelle had been standing in front of. Julian Choi, 1989 to 2024. Beloved son. Someone had spray painted over it. Black letters, sharp, monster, murderer. Finally dead. Celine smiled, pulled out a marker she'd been carrying since the trial ended, added her own contribution underneath. You were with the wrong brother. S. Then she walked away from the grave, from the cemetery, from the ghost of the man who'd tried to own her. Tsoka. 1 year after the trial, Celine received an invitation, not to a party, not to a gala, to a ceremony at a community center in the Bronx, the Patterson houses, the projects where she'd grown up. They were dedicating a new wing, a resource center for young women, job training, mentorship, support services. The Michelle Park Memorial Center, funded by the Seas Choi assets, built on the foundation of blood money turned into second chances. Celine attended, stood in the back while city officials gave speeches about justice and redemption and the importance of supporting vulnerable communities. Then they called her to the stage. Celine Carter, the director said, showed us that courage isn't about being fearless. It's about being terrified and fighting back anyway. This center exists because she refused to be silent, because she chose to burn down an empire rather than let it destroy one more woman. Applause, cameras, people crying. Celine looked out at the crowd, saw young women from the projects, girls who looked like she'd looked at 16, angry, scared, trying to figure out how to survive a world that didn't want them to succeed. She thought about what to say, about inspiring speeches and hopeful messages. But inspiration was a lie. Hope was a luxury. So she told them the truth. I'm not a hero. I'm someone who got lucky, who had resources and allies and a recording device at exactly the right moment. Her voice was steady. But I'm also someone who grew up right here, who learned young that the world doesn't protect girls like us, that we have to protect ourselves. She paused. Let them see the scars on her throat, the marks that would never fully fade. What I learned fighting the Choi family is this. Powerful people count on us being too scared to fight back. They count on us believing we're too small, too weak, too poor to matter. And sometimes they're right. Sometimes we are too small, too weak. She looked at the young women in the front row. But sometimes we're just smart enough and angry enough and desperate enough to burn their whole world down. And that's when we win. The applause was different this time, harder, knowing. After the ceremony, a girl approached her. 15, maybe 16. Hood up, eyes wary. You really took down a whole crime family? She asked. I really did. Weren't you scared? Every second. But you did it anyway. I did it anyway. Celine looked at the girl, saw herself, saw every woman who'd ever had to choose between dignity and survival. Because being scared is normal. Letting fear stop you from fighting back, that's how they win. The girl nodded, didn't say anything else, just walked away. But Celine saw her later, signing up for programs at the center, asking questions about job training, starting the long crawl toward a life that didn't involve choosing between bad options and worse ones. One girl. One life. One chance. It wasn't enough to balance the scales. Nothing could balance the scales, but it was something. Bag. 2 years after the trial, Celine got a package with no return address. Inside was a book. The Rise and Fall of the Choi Empire. An oral history. Sarah Kim's name was on the cover, published by a major house, already a bestseller. Celine opened to a random page, found herself staring at a photo she'd never seen before. Her and Julian at a charity gala, his arm around her waist, both of them smiling. She looked happy. He looked triumphant. The caption read, 3 weeks before Celine Carter would bring down one of New York's most powerful families. She flipped through the book, saw interviews with federal agents, prosecutors, survivors, saw timelines of the family's crimes, saw photos of Michelle Park and Julian's mother and Eli's mother. And at the end, in the acknowledgments, Sarah had written, to Celine Carter, who showed us that sometimes the only way to survive monsters is to become something they can't break. Your courage gave voice to the voiceless. Your testimony brought justice to those who'd been silenced. This book exists because you refused to disappear. Celine closed the book, set it on her shelf. Next to her own manuscript, the survival guide she'd been writing for 2 years, the one that was finally almost finished. Her phone rang. Kyle. They talked maybe twice a year now. Brief calls from untraceable numbers, updates that never included locations or details. I saw the book, he said. So did I. How do you feel about it? Celine thought about the question, about her life splayed out across 400 pages, about her pain packaged as a cautionary tale, about strangers reading about the worst moments of her life and calling it inspiring. Like I can't escape it. Like I'll always be the woman who took down the Choi family. Like no matter how many years pass, that's what defines me. Does it have to? I don't know. Does it have to define you? Kyle was quiet for a long time. I've been thinking about coming back to New York, to stop running. Why? Because I'm tired of being a ghost. Because you showed me that survival isn't about hiding. It's about living loudly enough that they can't pretend you don't exist. He paused. And because Eli asked about me, about you, wants to know if we're okay. Celine's throat tightened. What did you tell him? That we're survivors, same as him, that we're building lives from the wreckage. Kyle's voice softened. Is that true? Are you building something? Celine looked around her studio, at the students' thank you notes on her wall, at the half-finished manuscript on her desk, at the life she'd reconstructed from nothing but determination and rage. Yeah, she said, I'm building something. It's not perfect, it's not safe, but it's mine. Then maybe there's hope for all of us. They talked for another hour, about nothing important, about everything that mattered. When they hung up, Celine felt something she hadn't felt in 2 years. Not happiness, not peace, but possibility. The possibility that the Choi family's fall wasn't the end of her story, just the end of one chapter. The possibility that survival could evolve into something more than just not dying. The possibility that she could build a life that wasn't defined by the men who'd tried to destroy her. Mug. 3 years after the trial, Celine finished her book. Surviving Spaces You Weren't Born Into was published by a small press that specialized in practical guides for marginalized communities. It sold modestly, got good reviews from people who'd lived the experiences she described. It wouldn't make her rich, wouldn't make her famous. But 6 months after publication, she got an email from a reader. Dear Miss Carter, I'm writing to thank you for your book. I'm a first-generation college student navigating a corporate environment where everyone else seems to know rules I was never taught. Your chapter on reading power dynamics saved me from making a terrible mistake with a supervisor who was grooming me for exploitation. I recognize the signs because you described them so clearly. You probably don't remember me, but we met briefly at the Michelle Park Memorial Center 2 years ago. I was the girl who asked if you were scared. I wanted you to know I'm not scared anymore, or rather, I'm scared, but I'm doing it anyway. Thank you for showing us how. Celine read the email 3 times. Then she saved it in a folder with dozens of others like it. Letters from women who'd escaped bad relationships because they recognized the warning signs. Letters from students who'd survived hostile work environments. Letters from survivors who'd found courage in her story. She couldn't save everyone. Couldn't undo the damage the Choi family had done. Couldn't bring back Michelle or Julian's mother or the guard who'd helped someone escape and paid with his life. But she could do this. Could write. Could teach. Could be proof that surviving was possible. That fighting back was possible. That building something beautiful from the wreckage of something terrible was possible. 5 years after the trial, Celine was invited to speak at Columbia Law School, a panel on witness testimony in organized crime cases. She almost declined, but Kael would be there. He'd moved back to New York 6 months ago, started a nonprofit that helped families of organized crime victims navigate the legal system. They'd rebuilt their friendship slowly, carefully, with the understanding that some bonds were forged in fire and couldn't be broken. The panel was in a large auditorium, hundreds of law students, future prosecutors and defense attorneys and judges. Celine sat on stage next to Kael and 3 federal agents who'd worked the Choi case. They answered questions about evidence collection, witness protection, the challenges of dismantling entrenched criminal organizations. Then a student asked the question everyone always asked. "Miss Carter, do you think testifying was worth the cost?" Celine had answered to this question 1,000 times, to journalists, to students, to herself. But this time, something was different. This time, she had an answer that felt true. "Worth is the wrong question," she said. "Worth implies a calculation, that I could add up the trauma and the nightmares and the ways it changed me, then subtract the convictions and the lives saved, and come up with a net positive." She paused. Let the students sit with that. But life doesn't work that way. There is no calculation. There's just the choice you make in the moment and the person you become because of it. She looked at Kael. "I chose to fight back. That choice cost me my sense of safety, my ability to trust easily, years of my life spent in courtrooms reliving the worst moments. But it also gave me something I'd never had before. Agency. The knowledge that when faced with impossible odds, I didn't break. I bent, I adapted, I survived." She turned back to the student. "So was it worth it? I don't know. But I'd make the same choice again, because the alternative, staying silent, letting Julian Choi destroy more women, that cost would have been higher." The auditorium was silent. Then someone started clapping. Then another. Then the whole room. Celine didn't feel like she deserved applause, but she accepted it, because these students needed to believe that courage was possible, that justice was possible, even when the evidence suggested otherwise. After the panel, Kael walked her out. "You sounded different today," he said. "More settled, like you've made peace with what happened. Not peace, but acceptance." Celine looked at the campus, at students rushing between classes, worried about exams and internships and all the normal things that had nothing to do with organized crime or survival. "I'll never be the person I was before Julian. That person is dead. But I'm okay with who I became instead." "Who did you become?" "Someone harder. Someone who knows exactly how much damage she can survive." Celine smiled. "Someone who won't let powerful men tell her who she is." They walked in comfortable silence. Then Kael stopped. "I have something for you. Didn't know if I should give it to you, but..." He pulled out a small box. "Eli sent it, for you." Inside was a chess piece, a white queen, and a note in careful handwriting. "You taught me that queens don't just survive, they win. Thank you for showing me how." Eli Celine's vision blurred. "How is he?" "Good. Happy. He's 17 now. Applied to college. Wants to study social work. Help kids like him." Kael's smile was genuine. "He's building a life that has nothing to do with the family, just like you said he could. Tell him I'm proud of him. Tell him yourself. He's coming to visit next month. Wants to see you." Celine nodded. Couldn't speak. Just held the white queen and thought about an 8-year-old boy playing chess alone in a mansion, waiting for someone to save him. She hadn't saved him. She'd shown him how to save himself. And maybe that was the real lesson. The one she'd learned in the Choi family's ancestral hall, surrounded by armed federal agents and the smoking wreckage of Julian's plans. You couldn't save people who didn't want to save themselves, but you could show them it was possible. You could be proof that monsters could be defeated, that empires built on blood could fall, that women who were supposed to disappear could instead become something powerful people couldn't ignore. Madtek. 7 years after the trial, Celine stood in front of her bathroom mirror on her 40th birthday. The scars on her throat had faded to thin white lines, barely visible unless you knew to look. But she knew. She always knew. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Happy birthday. I saw the life you built. You did good. M. Michelle." Still alive, still running, still surviving. Celine typed back, "You too. Stay safe." Then messages from others. From Kyle. From Eli. From Sarah. From students and clients, and people whose lives had intersected with hers in the aftermath. From Margaret Chen, who'd disappeared after the trial, but still sent birthday wishes every year. From the guard who'd let Michelle escape, who'd somehow survived and now worked security for the nonprofit Kyle had founded. All of them survivors. All of them carrying scars. All of them building lives from wreckage. Celine's studio had expanded. She had 3 associates now, young women she'd trained. They taught workshops on power dynamics, on surviving hostile work environments, on recognizing exploitation before it was too late. The Patterson houses named a scholarship in her honor. Full ride to any student who wanted to study law or social justice. Her book was being translated into 7 languages. And somewhere, in a file cabinet in her office, she kept every piece of evidence from the Choi case. Not because she needed it, but because forgetting felt like betrayal. That evening, Kyle took her to dinner. Nothing fancy. Just a place in the Bronx where they knew her name and didn't care about her past. 40, Kyle said, raising his glass. "How does it feel?" "Like I survived something that should have killed me and lived long enough to see the other side." Celine clinked her glass against his. "How does it feel funding nonprofits with seized crime money?" Ironic, fitting, like the universe has a weird sense of humor. Kyle's expression sobered. "Father died last month, in prison. Cancer finally won." Celine absorbed this, felt nothing. "Did you go to the funeral?" "There wasn't one. Nobody claimed the body. The state cremated him, scattered the ashes in an unmarked grave." Kyle's laugh was bitter. 35 years building an empire, and it ended with a paper bag of ash and no one to mourn him. That's what happens when you build legacy on blood. "Is it?" Kale looked at her. "Because you built something on blood, too. On testimony and evidence and the willingness to destroy. And people celebrate you for it. That's different. Is it? We both tore down the same family. Both used the same evidence. Both made choices that cost people their lives." He paused. "The only difference is I was born into it and you chose it." Celine thought about this. About the guard who'd died helping Michelle. About the journalist who'd disappeared after asking questions. About every person who'd gotten caught in the crossfire of her war against the Choi family. "You're right," she said quietly. "I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who survived by being more ruthless than the people trying to kill me. That's not noble. That's just survival." "But it is survival. You're here, alive, building things that help people." Kyle reached across the table, took her hand. "That has to count for something." "Does it?" "I don't know, but I hope so. Because if it doesn't, if surviving doesn't lead to something better, then what's the point?" They sat in silence. 2 people who destroyed a family and lived to question whether that made them heroes or just different kinds of monsters. "I'm glad you're here," Celine said finally. "I'm glad we both